rather rigid and structured. You can only address this in public comment in a supposed 3-minute window about a topic on the agenda. To alleviate some of your concerns and to sort of undo a goof that we had of sorts, the special meeting that we had at the end of May, only special in the regard that it was a limited agenda that was only supposed to address open enrollment applications. That's typically what happens at that meeting. That got kicked down the road on the calendar a little bit. We did have a couple agenda items to address. The administrators brought the elementary boundaries issue, if that's the right way to say it, to that agenda for us to act on so that they could keep moving forward with their plans. But there wasn't public comment at that meeting. And I certainly realized after the fact that was a bad thing. And I apologize for that. And lots of you last night did have a chance to share with us your thoughts, and we're grateful for that. Huge kudos to everyone too. It was very respectful, very courteous, and that's certainly what we hope to have tonight too, and I know we will. So thanks for sharing that stuff last night. The difference with tonight is we're going to have a little bit of time to have you hear what I called all the background or the research or the homework that went into what they recommended as a change of sorts. And I think that'll answer a lot of your questions. I hope it does. And each of the administrators has a little role to play in that and to help you kind of see what's gone into the planning for this. And I hope you can understand the completeness and the complexity of that process. It covers a lot of areas. So when they get to that part, or I'm sorry, when they complete that part, I will come back up here and sort of open and explain the format for you we'll shift gears. Instead of you doing the listening, we're going to do the listening, and we'll invite your comments. When I get that far, the comment stations that we're going to ask you to use are going to be way on the outsides of the room here, down that angled aisle on the outside of the seats. There's a laptop there. We are projecting ourselves virtually or sharing ourselves with the virtual folks that are tuning in. So we're going to ask you to stand in front of that laptop so it captures your audio and your comments and your presence there. We'll do that in a sequential format. I've got a list here of those of you that have signed up, and that's not exclusive, of course. You can decide to speak. If you haven't signed up, that's fine. But I'm going to start with the list. Technically, we're going to start with the virtual folks that have asked to comment. When we get through those, we'll come to the folks of you that are here. I'll call out a name and an on deck of sorts so that one can make their way to a laptop and someone else can make their way to the other. Share with us your thoughts, your questions. We will do our very best to answer those questions in real time rather than compile them and try to answer them in bulk at the end. I think it's much more engaging, and whatever, it may trigger a follow-up question or so. So please bear with us a little bit there. Quite honestly, you may ask a question we don't know, and we'll be very honest with that, but we will find out and get back to you. That's kind of what we're going to do with those. So take the time that you want. Please be respectful of other folks' time. I hope we don't keep all of us here all night, but we're going to be accommodating for you. And then when you're finished, make your way back down to the front and kind of find your way back to where you want to sit. So I think that's enough of an intro and format laid out and whatnot. I will be honest, we're making this up as we go. We don't do these. This is not a school board meeting. Oh, a couple of things that aren't going to happen tonight is the school board is not going to do anything. We can't. It's not a meeting. It's not an agenda that we're following that we're going to take any action on any particular thing. So my colleagues are here, to support our administrators and to hear you folks. We heard you last night, and we'll certainly do that again. So we are not going to respond action-wise anyway. We certainly have time and ability to do that at our subsequent meeting. So that's not what's happening. But hopefully hearing your concerns, your thoughts, and quite honestly, we hope we hear suggestions, because if we haven't considered it, we certainly will. And hopefully in a collaboration, this has to be us and you working together to figure out how to make this work. Because that's ultimately what all of us want, is to find a solution here that works. So we want you to suggest things. We will digest it. We'll look at it. We'll incorporate it to the best that we can, and hopefully come back with something that's workable. So I'm going to stop and transfer over to Rich, and he can queue up the folks he needs to help give their background.
Hey, Rich. I asked one thing. I noticed last night at the meeting, it didn't feel like we were all getting attention. Is there a way that we can have you guys turn your laptops off so that we feel like you're having our attention?
Okay, so what we've decided is our laptops are off because
Okay.
there's a terrible feedback problem in this room. So we're trying to rely on a laptop. I should say 3, the other's at the exterior. And the, exactly, and the microphone here. I will try my best. I won't be speaking a lot. You've heard way too much from me. I want you to hear more from these folks, and we'll try to project as best we can. But this room is actually pretty good. So if you can't hear.
Yeah, if I want to address that, if it.
Noticing like notepads, which I mean is okay, but I know like yesterday, like some of the members didn't even look up at us. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't feel like that again, and that we were going to get full attention.
Yeah,
that was just my request.
We've designed our setup tonight to make sure that they're facing the audience and able to give your full attention. Sometimes when people are on their laptops, they're taking notes on their laptops too. I want to thank all of you for being here, both tonight and those of you that were here last night with us, sharing your thoughts, your concerns, and your questions. It's very much appreciated. It's an important process that we're going through. I'm going to turn things over in just a minute to our elementary principals to talk about some of the concerns that we have in place right now that we have to and have been working on finding solutions to. And they'll share some of that background and walk through some of that. I do want to be very upfront that we have heard some concerns about the communication that we've had with folks throughout this process. And I do want to let you know that those concerns that you have are valid. We did not do as good a job as we could have with communicating this out with our families, with our community, and that's something that we've learned. We kind of set it aside when we started working on some things with the COVID response, and we definitely should have circled back to it sooner than we did. So I apologize for that. I take ownership of that, and we've learned from that. With all of that said, and as Joe mentioned, just want to reinforce that we're going to give anyone here the opportunity to share their thoughts. We have a lot of different people who are taking notes and did last night too on the comments that people had. And then we're planning to continue to meet as an administrative team and talk through how we can solve the problems that we have because of the current situation, but also find ways to address some of the concerns that have been brought to us. So with all of that said, I'm going to turn things over to our elementary principals. I think Sarah Stuckey is going to start first. So we do ask our speakers from our admin team to come up here so that people who are listening virtually can hear us.
Thank you, Rich. Good evening. My name is Sarah Stuckey. I'm the principal at Harmony and Consolidated Elementary Schools, and I thank you for coming tonight. It's important that we get your input, and I really appreciate the great turnout we have tonight. I'm going to speak a little bit about why we are here. So we did recognize that we had some challenges related to accommodating the requests for parents to select the schools that students attended. And so those challenges that we then worked to put a plan in place to address were, and many of you grabbed the handout on your way in, and if you didn't, there are handouts on the back table for your way out. But I'm going to speak to the first 3 bullet areas, and those are those challenges. And the first being safety. So we know with young children, the more bus transfers we have for students, the greater the risk for student safety issues. Young ones have fallen asleep at the end of the day, and we've had to find them on the bus to make sure they get off and transfer to their other bus that takes them home. And that's one example of a safety type of thing that happens with the transfers that we have. The other topic that we really noticed that came about was equity issues. When it came to choice, that was something provided to some families, but not to others. And by that, I would mean if someone said, well, I would like to go to this school and I don't need the bus, I can provide my own transportation. That's not an option for all families. Some families both parents are working and or they're working different shifts, and they don't have a way to do that. They rely on the transportation provided by the district. So it became an equity issue when those placements were honored on the basis of being able to provide their own transportation. We also had a lot of issues with lost instructional time for students. So students who are on these bus transfers were not always arriving at school on time. And so the school day in an elementary school, those first few minutes are so important. That's where we do those morning routines, the morning meetings where the teachers are connecting with students as they come in our buildings, and we give them that warm greeting and that time that's needed to help them feel comfortable and safe. And when students were arriving late because of bus transfers, they were missing that, and it was happening regularly. So that's part of the instructional program at the K-3 level, and we needed to come up with a system that got all of our students equitably to school on time. We also, at the end of the day, have staff pulled in a lot of directions to provide the supervision needed so that we have safe transfers for students. So then those staff members are pulled away from other professional responsibilities. They were coming to parent meetings, IEP meetings, and other meetings late. They were unable to collaborate with parents who were there at pickup and had to catch the teacher quick. But the teachers and staff are busy doing bus supervision in these situations. And another equity issue was some students at the K-3 level were really having to wait a very long time because they may be on a bus and were ready to go, but they couldn't until all the transfer students got on that bus. So some of these children, after spending a long day at school, which, as you know, as parents and guardians, can be a very draining day for our youngest Redhawks, they then also just had to sit on a bus and wait even longer until those transfer students got on. So that was another part of that equity. Finally, the transportation inefficiencies. I spoke a little bit about transportation already, but also just wanted to mention the length of the bus rides for some of our riders and the additional transportation costs that came from accommodating all of those requests in our system as it had been. So that's kind of the backdrop, the background that gives you hopefully a better idea of what got us here and why those challenges needed to be addressed.
Hi there, I'm Marcia Schwengels, principal at Milton West. And as we we're looking at all of the problems and challenges that we currently have for our children, we tried to think about what are some reasons, what got us here. So there's many factors that have gotten us to the current situation that we're in. One situation is, as a district, we have really wanted to be very accommodating to families. We have wanted to make everybody's world as easy as we could make it. And doing that has led to kind of a domino effect that originally helping this one family didn't seem like a problem, but it in turn can make a systems problem when we don't follow through with all of those components that go with that. We also had a very strong commitment to keeping siblings in the same school. So if a child started in school A, we wanted that child to stay there, and we want their siblings to go. So that can be a process of numerous years while a family is in that school. And that was very, very important to us. But it has also led to some of these other problems that we have now and challenges that we have. We have added additional routes to help meet families' needs. That again has led to some of the challenges that we are currently in. We have, as a district, wanted to be very accommodating. So we've allowed bus requests to families, to any eligible bus rider, and the requests can sometimes be one drop-off. It might be multiple drop-offs in a week. Child A might go to house A on Monday, House B on Tuesday, House C on Wednesday, and House D on Thursday. And allowing that has put us in a systems problem that we have as well. So there have been a number of things that have gotten us to this situation. In order to improve the system, we have looked at lots of different solutions. One of those we did a couple years ago. We changed the transfer location from Northside to now all K-3 students are picked up at their buildings, so they don't have to go to Northside for that large transfer. That helped part of the challenges that we were having. We have increased the number of common stops or corner stops for neighborhoods, as opposed to the numerous door-to-door stops that we have been doing in the past. And again, that has helped some of the challenges.
All right, so just to continue off of what Marcia's saying, I think the point here is that we want you to understand that this was not an overnight decision, and we did vet through lots of different solutions that always circled back to the decision that we ended up coming to. So for example, we considered a phased-in approach. And if we were to do that, so allow families that are currently in our K-3 buildings to finish out their K-3 experience in the building they are currently in. So here's an example that hopefully some of you can relate to. Let's pretend that you have a kindergartner at Milton East, but then your wife or you are pregnant right now. Okay, for us to let that family ride through the Milton East experience, if they were living outside of that attendance area, that would take 8 to 9 years, okay, for all of the families to vet through. Now, that would be what I would call the worst case scenario, meaning 8 years, but that's how long it would take. So we kind of talked through that process, and this wouldn't end for 8 more years, meaning we would still be paying for all of these transfer buses, getting kids to the other side of town or in another attendance area. We also considered placement based on an address other than their primary address. So for example, if I lived in the Milton East attendance area, could I use a daycare over on the west side of town as my primary address? So then my student could be bused from that daycare to the school within that boundary, okay? And then the problem we found with that is we would then be pushing families who would be able to attend in that attendance boundary because of where they live. By allowing someone to come into that area, we are then bumping out people who would normally be able to attend in that area. So then that idea didn't seem feasible or equitable. Another one is we talked, part of us exploring solutions is we moved the 4K students into our elementary schools. And for anyone that listened last night, I was explaining to you how it worked. 3:20, the bell rings, the 4K students get on the bus, they transfer over to East, get out, get in a line, etc., over to West, to then get on their home buses to go home. Just a lot of different obstacles we're putting in 4- and 5-year-olds' way and to get home. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get them on one bus and then get them home? And that was part of our whole discussion in why we were moving 4K into our schools. And then lastly came our one of our solutions was to establish attendance boundaries, which is why we're here tonight. So just to sum it up, our solution, we have identified attendance areas with the idea that children who live within those areas will be placed at their schools so that most students, except for ones due to programming or administrative placement, would be able to take one bus and get home. So leave Milton East, get on the bus, and then get to your destination within your boundary with no transfers. And having said that, Mr. Martin, I'm going to turn it over to you so that we can hear from our people.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Kramer. So like I said, I have the list here of you folks that have signed up ahead of time to comment to us. And like I said, it is certainly not exclusive. If you do want to make a comment, you'll have to raise your hand and we'll let you have a place in line, I guess, when we're done with the folks that have signed up already. Where did Carrie Cleva go? Carrie's way in the back. We're going to start, and I'll give you a couple more caveats, or hopefully a couple friendly ground rules. And then we're going to have the folks that are joining us remotely comment first. And then we'll start with the you folks that have joined us here. Please follow the same courtesies that you did last night. Be respectful, be courteous, be kind, be polite, do all the things that we teach our kids. I think that's a great motto to follow. And you all did a wonderful job with that last night. So please remember that. One digression on my part is we did have a comment or two last night, pretty critical of one of our vendor partners, RightWay. We're hopefully not going there tonight. If you do have a specific issue with a vendor or a partner that we have, please bring that to our attention outside of this format. We're not here to publicly bash any of our vendors and our partners and so forth. So please let us know. We'd be happy to address those concerns, but probably not in this format here. So with that, Carrie, can you, and I will have to queue up the folks listening because they don't know what order they are on the sheet here. And if I struggle through this, bear with me. And that I need glasses for. Adam Faucheneau. Is that person able to join us? I hope I didn't butcher your name. Faucheaux.
Circle back to them too if you do the next person. Maybe announce the next two will be.
I can. Paul Markgraf and Vanessa Dubik are the next two. If either of them, if either of them are joining remotely, yep, we got a thumbs up here. Hello.
Hi, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Mr. Markgraf, you can go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, how's that?
Mr. Markgraf, go ahead.
Okay, good. Can you hear me now? Excellent. So I think just to kind of follow on to what Principal Kramer was saying there, I think, can't hear me? Oh, you guys can, yeah, there are some people that can hear me. I'm seeing a bunch of yeses. Okay, well, maybe I'll just ask the question real quick and then we'll go from there. So just to follow on real quickly to what Principal Kramer was saying, I think one of the things that I'm struggling in particular with is, the definition of home, returning to home is not really determined and hasn't been really defined yet. Obviously, we have a problem here in Milton with the amount of daycare that's available. So as parents, we send our kids to the daycare that we try to get them into and we hope to get them into. And so it doesn't necessarily help to have the kids delivered to home because we won't be there. And if that daycare happens to fall outside of, the attendance boundary, I'm curious how that will be addressed. I have a variety of questions here. And I don't want to take up a bunch of time. So what I'll do is I will forward these questions and comments onto you. But that one in particular, I'm curious in learning about. And then I'll mute and listen.
I'm going to thank you for the question, and that's something that came up last night too, and that's something that we are continuing to look at. It ties into the request ties into the things that the elementary principal spoke to earlier about some of the significant inefficiencies and inequalities in our system. While in our current system, when we are providing transport to a location that's outside of the attendance area for that school, whether it's a home or a daycare, that slows down the transportation system for other students. It requires those transfer buses, and it also comes at a significant financial cost to the district to provide that service for families and for daycares. So if we can find a solution that meets those needs and provides some support for families and for the daycares, we're willing to listen to some ideas on how to do that. I think we shared a little bit last night how the inequities piece is really around other students that are on that bus who have longer bus rides because we are transporting a student outside the attendance area, and the fairly significant cost. We shared that by providing transportation only within the attendance area, we're anticipating 2 to 4 fewer bus routes, and each bus route is about $45,000 per year. And we spend right now about $130,000 per year on our transfer buses. So we're also anticipating a financial savings there. And if it was just a case of, do we want to ask the taxpayers for that money so that we can provide that special transportation, we would weigh that. But unfortunately, we're looking at some fairly significant potential budget reductions for the coming year because of the economic downturn. So it isn't a case of, do we take money and provide that or not? It really is a case of, when we make reductions, where would we have to make reductions so that we can continue to provide that service? I know Marcia talked earlier about some of the, and Sarah both talked about some of the problems with our current system. And this is one of the things that we've been able to provide for the last couple years for families and daycares. But it has created a pretty significant strain on the system for us. So we're open to ideas on how to make that work. We have a meeting coming up tomorrow night with some of the daycare providers to talk that through. And we want to do things that we can help with. But we also want to make sure that we have a system that works for all of our students that ride bus, and also doesn't force us to reduce staff or have larger class sizes or have to reduce extracurricular opportunities so that we can continue to provide those special transportation options. So I don't know if there's anyone else on the admin team that wanted to add anything to that. Give me a wave if there ever is. So, all right, thank you.
There's some confusion about probably a term I used. So, Paul, just to clarify, I said home, bringing you back home. But what we're saying is we will bring you to an address within your attendance area. Okay, so if your daycare was located within the east attendance area and it was a bus, it could be a bus stop. So in other words, part of the eligibility criteria, everyone, is you have to live more than 2 miles away from your primary school where you're assigned to, or you live in what they call a UHT, which is an unusually hazardous transportation area. Okay, so Paul, I had used the word home, I believe, and that's what you were asking. And so I just want to clarify that you can have an address within your attendance area. The bus will take your student there. So does that clarify for you, Paul?
I mean, it does. And unfortunately, that's not the case for us. Our daycare provider is probably 3 blocks outside of the attendance zone. So, you know, technically speaking, it probably isn't going to work. And while I understand that, you know, what you're looking for is significant, you know, cost savings, and rightfully so for the district. Don't get me wrong, that's important. I think, you know, the general economic climate that we're all going to face coming up here in the very near future is one of, you know, less revenue coming into families. And, you know, by, I think, forcing a situation right now, it could result in families where maybe a parent can't work because there's no way to make the bus work in that scenario. So, you know, I think there's just a lot of variables that sort of balance to the negative side right now. And so that's my concern, especially when, you know, we can't make the decision that, hey, you know, our daughter can absolutely go to school and can get bused. You know, we have to be looking at all kinds of We have to be looking at all kinds of solutions ourselves, and those include solutions like potentially a different district. And I don't want to do that, but I can't imagine that I'm alone either. So, you know, thank you for responding, and I'll mute myself and listen.
Yes, Chris.
So, playing off from what you said, well, this is good. We don't want to, let's eliminate 2 to 4 bus routes, $45,000 a piece. We're looking at $90,000 to $180,000. If you want to take care of that, you don't want to reduce teachers, you don't want to reduce that, you don't want to eliminate extracurriculars. What extracurriculars are there for K through 3?
Well,
Where you're going to eliminate.
that's spoken in the vein of our entire budget.
Exactly. The way you're putting this on the shoulders of K through 3 to budget, to eliminate the budget issue that you have for the buses. You know what I'm saying? You're putting extracurriculars over top of these kids getting to school and learning.
I don't care about football. I care about my 3rd grader, 1st grader, 2nd grader.
I'm just putting that out there. I mean, we're talking about this as a small piece of the pie. I mean, I'll get into it a little bit more with something I have. But it's irritating me that you're jumping on and saying, well, I don't want to eliminate this. I don't want to cut this back. I don't want to cut that back. Oh yeah, I don't want to hamper extracurriculars because you want to cut out four buses.
Because can we circle back to that question?
Yeah.
Because we were gonna hear from all of our remote people first, just for the structure, so that we don't lose those people. And we don't want to lose track of that. When we have a chance to come out, definitely feel free to bring that back up.
Okay, to sort of stay on track a bit, remotely, do we have either Vanessa Dubik or Amanda Cusick available? And I apologize for the clunkiness here to accommodate the folks remotely, but this is the best we can do. Also remote, I have signed up Lindsay Scheidel Hergert and Brianna Leader. Oh, I'm sorry. Vanessa, if you can hear me, go ahead, please.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Sounds like it. I realize that I'm probably in the minority here tonight, but I thought it was important to express support for this policy in addition to the views expressed tonight, because I'm guessing the school board and principals did not hear a whole lot of that. I realize this could not have been an easy decision for anyone involved. And I applaud the school board and principal for making the decision, and obviously it was well thought out given the information that we heard tonight. And I really do think that you're setting the Milton School District up for success. I'm sure you guys all learned a lot along the way, things that could have been done differently. And I think that'll only make us a better school district going forward. So that's all I wanted to share, was that I know this couldn't have been easy, and express my support for the school board and principals and everything that they've done.
Thank you, Vanessa. How about Amanda Cusick? And I also mentioned, of course, Lindsay Scheidel Hergert. Is she available? Okay. I have you on the list, I believe, so we'll get there. Bear with me. There's a couple more that have signed up remotely. Brianna Leader, if you're listening.
Hi there, I'm here.
Thank
Hear
you.
me?
Go ahead. Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you. So we are actually one of the families that would be affected, and I fully support the strategic decision to take care of some of the busing issues. And my kids are the perfect example. A couple of years ago, we moved from East Territory into West Territory, and we wanted to keep them at East because we did not want to disrupt their elementary years. And it was said at that time that, you know, they tried not to move kids if they didn't have to in elementary years because they were already changing in fourth grade when they go to Northside. Having said that, it resulted in an hour and 10-minute bus ride for my kids. And so I have made the decision and have the flexibility working from home to take them to school 90 to 95% of the time. So I understand and completely agree with the strategic side of the decision, but it's the timing that I disagree with. And I think there's never going to be a perfect time for anything like this. There's always going to be inconveniences and people that don't agree with the timing. But given the last few months and what has happened with COVID-19 and how that's impacted the education for our kids, schooling from home, that disruption and just the added stresses, fears, anxieties that have resulted from that. I know that, you know, I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I hear it every year from teachers and parents alike that September is always a month that everyone struggles a little bit because it's back in the swing of things and all of the emotions come out. And in a year where we don't even know yet what the school year will look like in September, adding one more thing to the mix, I think is frankly unacceptable, especially for our youngest students in the district, not to mention the parents that are struggling with, you know, things like daycare right now. So I understand that a phased approach has been considered, but have you considered a phased approach where maybe it's not seeing that whole family through? Maybe it is letting the kids who are at that school right now, or anybody going into 4K, beginning it there, letting them finish their elementary education at that school. And any new siblings would obviously need to go to the new location within their territory. I also think that having some type of buffer year, you know, transition year, I understand that that will not take care of the inequities on day one, this next school year. However, having even a year for parents to really understand what's happening, look at other options for daycare. You know, if their kid is in kindergarten or first grade, maybe they say, you know what, we're going to switch. You still have 2 or 3 years left at this school. You're going to meet plenty of friends before we go to Northside. But in our case, we have a second grader who doesn't deal well with change. And, you know, that doesn't come out at school. It comes out at home. And it results in a lot of anxieties and a lot of late nights and a lot of crying because of that. So just wondering, you know, even letting first and second graders ride it out, have you thought about some type of, you know, if parents can provide transportation for the next year or two, would that be an option?
I'm the worst digital citizen in the room, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think the question that I heard was around the ability to grandfather current students in, if you will, or have some type of a phased approach. And that's a message that was in our notes from last night too. We heard that from quite a few people last night and in conversations and emails from parents over the last 2 weeks. And that is something that we are able to take a look at. We want to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that we have a system in place that addresses the issues that are in front of us right now. But if there is a way to lessen that burden, especially for the coming year, we understand that there's some very unique circumstances with the way the school year ended this year. And, excuse me, and with the way that the school year is likely to start in the coming years. So one of the things that we've been talking through is whether there are some different options that we can build into the system to allow people some flexibility. So we want to hear more from people tonight. I think I saw a comment pop up from someone who said that they had a plan that they were going to share soon. So we want to be able to hear those things tonight and then move quickly on any potential changes over the upcoming week or two, heading into the next board meeting on June 22nd. And again, if there's anything that anybody from our team wants to add in addition to that. So again, thanks for your concerns. One thing I want to share too is it's important that for the folks here in person, I know that people are very respectful. Sometimes when you're sitting at home at a screen, it's easy to make a comment that might not be as respectful. So we ask people who are viewing this remotely to make sure that they are being as respectful as our audience is here. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm unmuted. There's a couple folks left on the remote list here. James Hudzinski. Oh. Oh. Adam. Adam, are you able to join us? He was there, Carrie? We'll give him a second if he's listening. If you are commenting remotely, could you start with giving us your name, please? There's folks listening from the media that would like to document some of the comments. So please bear that in mind. Adam, I'll give you a couple more seconds. And please cue back in if you're available. James Hudzinski.
I'm here.
Go ahead, James.
All right. I got a little bit of paper to read, so I'm just I typed up a little message I want to talk about here tonight. Good evening. My name is James Hudzinski, and last night I presented an option that I felt could be a happy medium between what the board approved last week with the attendance boundaries to what I felt we could potentially do moving forward. Change is needed based upon the board and administration. I just believe that change needs to be gradual instead of abrupt like currently planned. Here's my proposal, slightly modified based upon feedback in last night's meeting that I heard. Number one, delay this change for the 2020-2021 upcoming school year to allow time and discussion on new plan that needs to be official by December 31st, 2020. Doing this would allow parents impacted by whatever change is made 6+ months to figure out what they're going to do for the 2021-2022 school year. Number two, parents that can drop off their kids and pick up their kids at current school will be allowed to continue this for up to 4 years. By doing this, busing is not an issue and the kids get to stay with their peers. Please note this only applies to existing students that were at a given elementary school in our area for the 2019-2020 school year. Number three, 4K students that will be attending a Milton Elementary School in the fall of 2021 will be required to attend the school that falls in the boundary the board presented last week. This continues for 4 years so that the recently approved board plan from last week on the boundaries can be fully implemented with new students attending elementary schools in the area. In the board meeting where this attendance boundary was approved, it was said that only 10 to 15% of the families in the district would be affected. But we heard last night and are hearing tonight from the community, this affects all of us if this change remains in place. If this was also on the table since the fall, shouldn't have all the stakeholders be represented in discussions on this matter? Please reconsider this, if not for the parents, for the kids. I don't want kids to lose multiple friends or best friends at their local school. I don't want kids that would be impacted by this change to start the upcoming school year trying to meet some new friends virtually, especially with the amount of unknowns right now. Again, I ask you to please consider this plan so the board and administration needs are met. Just make the gradual instead of abrupt change. Now, on a side note, I do want to point out a couple other factors with the board to look at the cost savings if money is truly the issue. I heard from one impacted family that at least 100 open enrollments in 4K through 3rd fall outside of the attendance boundary have enrolled within our district, but yet they pay little into everything the district provides. Why are they not impacted first instead of families that lie within the attendance boundaries? Why don't we look at closing open enrollment for people outside the attendance boundary as a first line of cost savings? Also, I heard from another family that the school doesn't want to move these students because of stability. I hope that's not true. Second, there's always outs in contracts. I work for a company that supplies local television stations the hardware and software for their weather staffs, and often we see some come to us from different vendors, and in some cases, existing clients go to new vendors before their contract expires. If cost savings helps us remain as is for a district for at least the upcoming school year, with some families grandfathered in for longer, why can't we look at going to a different bus provider and see if we can save costs there? Never hurts to look into this. No one knows what the upcoming school year will look like. Parents, kids, staff, administration, the board, and it's all due to COVID. I also think a number of decisions are going to be made in late July, early August that will impact this upcoming school year beyond this. But don't let this be one of them. Our kids don't need this change, not now at least. Have this impact new kids coming into elementary school, not the current ones. I know changes are likely needed, but this is not one of them. Please reconsider for the community.
Thank you, James. James, you had mentioned that you have some written copies of that. If you can email those thoughts to me, we will incorporate that into our discussion about different ways that we can move forward. There are I saw some things pop up in the chat box about some of the comments some of the things that you made. Some of them might be things that we can incorporate. Some of them are things we don't have a legal ability to not take open enrollment students, but there are some interesting topics that you had, and I want to stay in touch with you on those. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Adam, are you able to join us? Rich, I saw a comment pop up. They're asking about an address to send comments and suggestions to. Okay. Online, just beware that we will share with you the address that you can send that stuff to momentarily. James has commented, I can't find Adam, and I apologize. Anna Juice is signed up. Anna, are you remote? And I'm not hearing or seeing anything indicating she is wanting to comment. So I'm going to transfer to the folks that have signed up that are joining us in person. And this just coincidentally, I think, is the order you signed up in. So we're going to go right down from the top. And I will, like I had mentioned earlier, kind of do a next up and an on deck of sorts so that we can be efficient here as much as possible. Heather Moore and Jim Moore, if you folks want to, and if you want to use the same laptop, that's fine. Just we'll bear that in mind as they're making their way over. If you folks remember the social distancing stuff, we can have an on deck speaker the appropriate distance behind the folks that are addressing us. Third on the list is Jenna James. If Jenna could maybe go over to the other one, we can accommodate her. Okay.
We did, while they're getting ready, a couple really quick things. For the couple folks that had signed up to speak online and weren't able to, if you were trying to get in and didn't have access, feel free to reach out by phone or email to us. And for others who are watching, I'll give my email address now. It's also available on our website, but it is my last name. It's DAHMANR @milton-ed.edu. dahmar.k12.wi.us. So I'll say that again one more time real quickly. It's DAHMANR@milton.k12.wi.us. Thanks.
All right, thank you for taking the time to listen to us in regards to this transportation policy and the newly created elementary boundary lines that never existed on this policy that was originally created in 2017. I am not against the attendance policy, but I am against the way it was rolled out so abruptly without any public input or listening sessions before it was voted on. Last night at the board meeting, I did a quick poll of the board to find out that surprisingly, none of them have elementary kids that currently attend in the Milton School District. Only one had an elementary kid that was out in a private school, which I'm kind of surprised because none of this affects you guys directly, and you guys didn't put any thought into how it affects the families of the district. With the money you're trying to save on busing, in order to save $190,000 to $180,000 in busing, which is completely peanuts compared to the referendum that was pushed at us 3 times before it finally passed. With these buses not running the last 3 months of school, we should have some savings built up right there already. Not to mention the savings in the school utility bills the last few months, as there was no one there to use them. There's also no buses going to Small Wonders right now that are this coming year. Because there's no 4K program there, we're not paying rent on that building. That's a savings right there we could put towards this busing and grandfather everyone in. I firmly believe that we can work through this together and still be able to grandfather students into their current schools. Many of us parents have written promises from school administrators from when our kids were placed in 2018 that they would be at the same school throughout their entire elementary career and that their younger siblings would go there as well. Now these are broken promises by school administrators that no one wants, that are written. First, you do not take into account students who do not use their home address for their bus stop. My kids get picked up at our child care provider, who is a half mile from their current school, before they were forced out of it. This has been our bus stop since we started going to our current child care provider during the middle of the 2017-2018 school year, when our previous child care provider moved out of state. I get it that you're trying to avoid Johnny getting off the bus at 3 different locations through the week. I totally agree with that. There's no reason he should be getting off the bus at 5 different stops every week. Get one pickup, one drop off, it stays that way entire year. Our parents can pick them up from school. Also, a slow route will allow child care providers to adjust their business plan in upcoming years. Good child care in this district is very hard to find, and this abrupt rollout would force many parents to change to child care providers on extremely short notice, not to mention put some child care providers out of business. Secondly, the incoming 4K students in the Consolidated area must be bused to West, since there is no 4K program at Consolidated. What I am proposing is we allow the current students to be grandfathered into their current schools while adopting some of the following options. Option 1, a slow rollout, starting with the incoming 4K class. The slow rollout, this will see the savings in the next 4 to 8 years, if not sooner. I know one person mentioned if someone's pregnant now and their oldest is in 4K, that will keep going on. Well, the math doesn't add up on that one. The baby will be in 4K, the oldest will be in Northside by that time. Option number 2 that I come up with, not the most popular, but parents must provide their own transportation for existing kids only in the district, so they'll be grandfathered into their current location. Option 3, the students can be picked up at a bus stop in their school's new boundary lines, or a bus stop near their home that will get them to a transfer point, such as West students picked up in the Consolidated area who will be getting on the transfer bus to the 4K kids each morning at Consolidated. Option 4, have 3 to 4 mass pickup points per new school zone that are both safe and near each child's home. This would greatly reduce the number of stops the bus would have to make. Parents can get to the stop. The next option, grandfather students in their current school, keeping their current bus stop, but charge them a yearly fee to cover this cost. If they choose to get on a bus, at a bus stop in their school's new area, this bus fee would be waived. Lastly, delay the rollout 1 year. Work with the public on the map discrepancies before the rollout. There's no reason you guys can't work with us. And boundary lines were obviously in the works last fall. No one knew about it, no public input before even a vote by the school board. We all know there's gonna be transfer buses in the mix, even in this new plan. So let's all work together and put a plan in place that logistically makes sense. As a shipping and logistics manager myself, I know how quickly transportation costs can add up, and I'm all for saving money where we can. I firmly believe that a slow rollout of the attendance policy with certain bus stops posted on a map for mass pickup, that we can save a lot of money district-wide and keep everyone happy that their kids are not being uprooted. I am also willing to help out where needed, free of cost. I volunteer my time, and if Right Way is not performing to the standards we have set for them, it's time to hold them accountable and make them either correct it or go out for bid. There's no reason we can't get out of our contract year 3 of 5 that we can, there's other bus companies in the area that we gladly would take our business that will probably perform to our standards and then some. I'll leave you with this final thought as it pertains to our kids district-wide. Picture yourself as a 7-year-old in the school district that just completed the second half of the school year at home due to a pandemic. You haven't seen your friends in person for 3 months. There's no normalcy in your life right now. And due to a not well thought out decision by our board and administrators, you are now getting forced to move to a different daycare, different school, that you won't be with your friends and classmates that you've known over half your life, just so the school board can save some money on school buses. You didn't even get to say goodbye. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Heather, you can go next.
My name's Heather Moore, a parent of a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old in the Milton School District. I will do my best. My experience is a little bit different than probably majority of the people here. I'm not a Wisconsin native. I married a Wisconsin native, but he's not a Milton native. And so I come with a little bit of a different experience. In my meeting with Superintendent Dahlman, I expressed that, you know, some people are saying around the school district that children are resilient. They'll bounce back from this. I grew up as a military child. I bounced around schools my entire elementary career. I was in a different school every year. My 5th grade year, I was in 3 different schools due to having to move around. It's not easy to be able to keep up academically on those changes because every school is different. There can be the same curriculum, but every school is different. And taking these kids in the middle of their elementary career and moving them, especially after everything that we've been through with the pandemic, even as adults, this is hard to wrap our heads around. And now you're going to have our children have to wrap their heads around having to move schools. We strategically picked our childcare provider based off of our location of our home, thinking that our child was going to be placed in the closest elementary school to our house. We live as far west as you can go with the district lines and as far north as you can go with the district lines. Distance-wise, we are closer to Consolidated School. We do not have to jump across the state highway to get to the elementary school that my son is at right now. With this change, our son will now have an even longer bus ride. He will have to change childcare providers. And I'm asking why? Why are we going to uproot these kids? Let's do a phased-in approach. Let's let these kids stay with their friends and people that they're familiar with. Because I can tell you, my kid going into 2nd grade is going to be making himself sick having to go to school and having to go to a new school that's 4 times the size of the school that he's currently in. And then I have to sit there and tell my daughter, who's going into kindergarten, that the friends that she has through my son's younger siblings, that they're now not going to be able to see each other because she's now going to have to go to a different school. So there's multiple impacts to this. Last night I had talked on a policy level because that's my job. And the way things are done, we're done with this without even taking public input is unacceptable in any public forum that you talk about. I've had people in my face yelling at me in public forums because of policies that were taken. This is not the proper way to do this. You should have had a public input. You should have brought members of the community to the table, especially these daycare providers that you're going to force to close because they can't even have students be able to be bused to a school that you're making these kids go to. So I want this to be reconsidered. I don't have a problem with the attendance boundaries, but I think there needs to be a phased approach, and let's not disrupt our kids' lives any more than we absolutely have to necessarily do this. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will shift to the other side of the room to Jenna James.
Thank you. My name's Jenna James. I'm here with my husband. We have 2 kids who are currently at Consolidated. One is going to be moving next year to Northside, so we just have one that would be affected by this. I don't agree with it. I'm worried about how he will react to this if this does stay as it was voted. I won't make this really long because a lot of people have already said how I feel. I just have a couple of questions. I am curious, the numbers that were given was 10 to 15% of kids that were affected. I'm wondering if there's a concrete number that you can give us out of the 3,500 kids in the district that actually on paper are affected as of right now.
Yeah. If you go ahead, if you have more questions.
Okay. Sure. My only other question then, I know some teachers in the district who live in different boundaries are able to request exceptions. Is this a hard and fast rule? You are in that district and that's where you're going to go, or are there actually going to be exceptions based on individual circumstances? Is that going to be considered at all or no?
Marcia, do you have the number of kids question?
Let me start again. The numbers I'm going to tell you are students who are currently attending school A, but that school is not in their home attendance area.
So that has so then you have no understanding of what the total number of children that would be affected that get picked up at home and get dropped off somewhere else that would be outside. Like a daycare. They leave their home. Like my son gets picked up in the morning at the house, goes to school, gets dropped off at daycare. Daycare is now an echo away from being outside or from inside.
Correct.
So now so those numbers don't show those kids that are so close. But you know what I'm saying?
Right. The numbers that I'm going to tell you are the numbers who their primary address does not match the school they are currently attending. So that's what I have found data for. 132 students out of 1,113 would have to move schools from where they're currently attending to where their home address shows that their school would go to with these new attendance boundaries.
So that could easily be a multiple of 3 or 4, depending on where they're dropped off.
Does that?
I'm not understanding your question.
What she's saying, Marcia, is her son or daughter gets picked up at their house and is currently bused to X. What school? Their home address school. But their daycare provider that they've had for 4 years is in, say they go to West, but their daycare provider is in Consolidated. So they get picked up from their house and go to West. But when they go to leave West, they can't come home because there's someone not there. But their daycare provider for 4 years has been Consolidated, and now they can't get that student there. I don't know if
I
that's
gotcha.
the right
I don't have those numbers. I don't know every child's daycare provider, so I can't get you those.
How would this
can be acknowledged that it's multiplied by 2 or 3 times. That's 30 kids.
Yeah, the numbers that were shared are the students, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Marcia, but the students who are attending a school, one school right now, and with the new boundaries, would be in a boundary of a school different than the one that they are attending right now. We don't know everyone's daycare, so we don't have an answer to that, but we can look into that issue. I want to address the second part of the question. I think the second part of the question was around staff members. Is that correct? Yeah, and in the administrative guidelines, we do have the ability to, first we would be placing the students who live within that attendance area and running numbers, and that includes, maybe I'll get to that second part later. We place the students who live within that attendance area at each grade level at that school, and then we look at what those class numbers are. If there's still room at that school, then we would allow a staff member to request having their child attend that grade level at that school, even if they don't live within that attendance area. And then the third, let me finish, please. And then the third would be placement of open enrollment families. So if an open enrollment family wants to attend a certain school, we would place them after we've placed in-district students, and then any staff members that would request, and then open enrollment students. If we put in a system that and one of the ideas that was thrown out was to have, or not thrown out, but was shared, I guess. One of the ideas that was shared was to put in a system where families can request to stay at their school. It's kind of a grandfather-in model. Stay at their school through a request form or a transfer form. If they live, let's say they live in Harmony attendance area, they've been attending East and they want to continue attending East. So an idea that someone threw out was, can we have a way for those people to request to stay if there's room in those areas and that family can provide transportation? So that's something that we're looking at as an option. I know that will meet the needs of some people. It might not meet all of the needs, but it's something that has been requested, and that's something that we would look at. And if that was the case, we would place those in-district requests before we would place open enrollment requests or staff members requests. Yep, and let's take some follow-up questions on that.
This might be for Marcia, because you're saying that it's only for the in-district that you have that this would affect the 132. How many open enrollment, roughly, do you think are going to have to shift schools, and then with the changes in the transportation are also going to be affected? So let's say there's a daycare provider in Consolidated Zone who provides care for Consolidated as well as West due to open enrollment placement there. And now, because of the busing issue and the no transfers, they're going to lose 2/3, if not all, of their childcare because of the change in the attendance. So you're saying that this is only necessarily affecting 10 to 15% of the in-district, but what is as a whole on open enrollment that this is going to impact childcare providers?
I'm not certain if I understand the open enrollment portion of that question.
So parents, if they choose to open enroll, may choose a daycare provider within that school district.
So if they live outside of our school district,
Outside of the district, it's a school choice for open enrollment.
so they, for instance, I want to, let me ask a quick question just to clarify. Yep. So if they live in Janesville School District, they fill out paperwork to enroll into our school district, and they have daycare within our school district. All right, I understand the scenario. Now go ahead with your question.
Okay, so now, because of the changes, let's say that that daycare provider is not in the school zone that these school choice and open enrollment students are being placed at. And because of the changes that you're doing with transportation, even though these parents are paying for their seats on the buses, they're now being forced to have to either go out of the district or have to locate a provider in that new school zone, which could, in essence, dry up providers in certain areas.
There's a lot of pieces to that, and I'll take a stab at it, and then principals or others, if you have things to add to it. We want to make a commitment to make sure we place students who live within our district first. We feel that those are our property taxpayers. We respect the choice program that the state has, where you can choose to attend a district outside the one you live in, and we encourage students to attend, and we respect the rights of families to make that decision for a lot of different reasons, all kinds of different reasons why someone might choose to attend a school outside a school district other than the one they live in, and we respect that. But we also respect that our local families should have the first option on places in our spots, if you will, in our classrooms. And then the second piece of that is that nothing would stop that family that lives in Janesville from applying for our school district. Let's say, for instance, they're a second grader, and they tell us we'd like to go to East for second grade. And that's where their childcare is, in the East District. If we've gone through all of our other placements and we have room in second grade at East, we would place them at second grade at East. If we go through our other placements and we don't have room at second grade at East, we would need to look at our other second grades and say, we can fit you in at West, for example. But we're not going to ask our taxpayers in our district to pay for transportation for you from West to the daycare that you chose. You can stay with that daycare, and we would never say you can't go to that daycare anymore. But part of that needs to be the parent's responsibility, that I'm going to choose to join your district. I'm going to be assigned to a school because there's not room at the school that I would prefer. And I think it puts an undue burden on our local taxpayers to say our district should provide transportation for that person from a school over here to a daycare over there.
Well, they're paying for their seats. Right. They pay $150 a year for their seats.
And all that, and I understand, and there's some other issues with it. We have the cost that we charge families for the buy a seat doesn't equal to the cost of providing that transportation as part of the issue. If we were going to do that, we'd have to greatly and balance it. We'd have to significantly increase that amount. So I'll let Jen can share some things, and then we'll address other follow-ups.
Right. So two things with that. Eligibility, transportation eligibility. So the only way you can purchase a seat, what you're talking about, we called it buy a seat, is if you are not an eligible bus rider. Okay, so let's use this open enrollment for an example. Obviously, they're not eligible because they don't live within our district. Okay, but what they can do is buy a seat. And the only way you can buy a seat is if you hook onto an already existing stop. Okay, for $150, which is a two-way, or $75. And what Rich was referring to is the average cost, and correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but the average cost for a bus rider is about $600. okay? And so, what's that?
It's already a stop. It's not any.
Sure is already a stop, but part of that is it all takes time. So the amount of time it takes for 20 kids to get off the bus at a stop in comparison to one, you know, it increases the ride of the bus, which increases the gas, which increases the amount of time the employee's working. I mean, it's all part of the formula. It's an average cost, okay? So that's how those open enrollment families would able to buy a seat. So that addresses that. The other, yes.
Also, that there has to be space available on the route. So it's not just about using the existing stop, but if the bus is full, they're not going to create another
Right.
route or another bus on the same stop.
Right. If the bus is near capacity, there might not be room on that bus for you to purchase. It's only if there's pending space. So.
I'm just questioning because there's, once you go, and this doesn't pertain to me.
Mhm.
This doesn't pertain to me.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, you have families that have open enrolled and chosen to come here.
Mhm.
They get on at a specific child care facility.
Yep.
And which is typically is a dedicated bus route. And in our rural area, in Consolidated, there's always a transfer to West from Consolidated to go.
Sure.
Come back into Milton.
Mhm.
And so when there's been families that were open enrolled, placed at West, have been at West for 2 years now, going on their third year, now because of the new transportation, they're not going to be able to get on that bus, which will force the daycare to have to close because they don't
Right.
have any.
So I think we hear what your point is, or at least I do, and I've taken notes. And so what you're saying is now an open enrollment family who was going to East and had daycare over at West and was doing the transfer thing for $150 is now not going to be able to do that. And so the ripple effect or the domino is now that family doesn't have daycare, and now that daycare provider has lost a slot. That's what you're saying. And so what we don't have, which Marcia had spoke to, is we don't have the data or the numbers that you were looking for on who's affected after they are done with school, okay? Because as Rich mentioned, we don't have everybody's, a list of what everyone's before school plans are and after. Did you have a question?
There isn't one daycare provider in We'll say 100%. I'm a consolidated school district. All of my kids that I lock go to consolidated school. Kids go to consolidated, go to West, go to East. Did that, there isn't a daycare provider here that would be on. It's like you can't just service one school. That's not how business works. I mean, you can't be, I hate to, or the food system here. You can't just service one school, that's it. No, you gotta service Milton, you gotta service Whitewater, you gotta service Jefferson, you did that, you can't pigeonhole yourself. Not how it works. You gotta be able to service the entire community.
Yep. I'm gonna turn it over to Rich, but I did hear what your point was, so we've got that noted. Did you wanna?
Yeah, I'll share something. There was somebody waiting with a question here. Let's get that question first, and then we'll address some of the issues.
So my name's Chelsea. Why was it not taken into consideration working with the school or the school bus system? Why wasn't it taken to partnership, look at those addresses compared to their home addresses? Because this would have eliminated a huge issue. Because I know the school doesn't know where they go. Talk to the bus company. I've talked to the bus company multiple times. I actually did a 5-seat program. My kids were in the West, said they were going to go to West at my home address. Their daycare, which was 2 miles down the road, their kids went to West. But I still had to buy a seat when my kids were already in West school. So.
Because you weren't eligible for transportation? Is that why?
I was. If
Okay.
they would have gotten on at my house, they would have gone to West.
Sure.
They get on at the daycare's house. They went to West.
Mhm.
There was already a bus stop there, but yet I still had to pay for my kids to ride the bus.
Mhm.
So why aren't we looking at that option?
Sure.
I mean, if you have to raise the cost of it, do it gradually. Work with the parents. Work with the school bus company. Find a different school bus company that would give us a better rate of transferring our
Sure.
kids.
Here's what I want to address with what you had said. So one of the things that we did look at is if we were to continue to be what I would call status quo, all right, busing people from the east to the west and actually consolidated coming into town for daycares, because it's not just an east and west issue, it's consolidated families busing into Small Wonders, okay? So if we were to remain status quo, I had asked the bus company and we'd work together to come up with a solution to being status quo. And it was going to be 4 to 5 more buses needed or vehicles to continue to do this. But at the end of the day, everyone, it's not only about the cost. It's the amount of instruction time that is lost at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and the burden that we're putting on our students, family, and families, like in staff, to have all of these transfers and confusion going on. And I just don't want to lose thought, and I'm not arguing with you, I'm just pointing out that we did vet through staying status quo and making that happen.
And I want to share one thing. We have a gentleman who's been waiting patiently for his turn over here. We can circle back to these questions, but I want to make sure that we're not having people from the audience take the place of someone that's been waiting for their turn. So keep those questions. We'll continue to answer them as they come up. If you haven't signed up to speak, we will give you a chance to sign up to speak. We kind of, on that direction, we went down the path of should the district continue to provide that special transportation for daycares or not. And we've shared a lot of reasons why that has caused a problem in our district. We put that system in place over the last couple years. We've tried it, and I realize that it provides a great service for our daycares, but it also creates an incredible strain on our students, not just financially, but on the structure of our school day for students. So it's definitely something that we have to continue to look at advantages and disadvantages of, and we'll definitely be happy to stay and listen to other questions on that topic that people have. But we'll circle to the gentleman who's next on the side.
One quick disclaimer of sorts before James can go here. This comment is for the virtual folks joining us. We certainly value your input, et cetera, but this format that we've got makes those comments a little distracting to the folks that are speaking at the moment. If you would like to comment and offer us some stuff, we would be happy to take that. Indicate so to Carrie, and she can help help that happen as far as you being able to comment to us. And secondarily, it is difficult online to pick up the questions that you folks have. So maybe all of us answering the question, if you repeat it a little bit, just kind of give folks the background of what you're responding to. So my apology. Go ahead, James.
No problem. Hi, my name is James Haas. I think I bring a unique perspective to this dilemma. We can clearly see that the board and the administrative team have some work to do. As an employee of a neighboring school district, by the way, my views do not represent the school district who I work for, as many of those students open enroll here. It's an interesting dilemma. But I'm also the spouse of a daycare provider for staff members as well as community members. So I think we're seeing either tonight and last night that this presentation has not been communicated well. The transparency that the board appreciates and members have run on that agenda show that we haven't done this right. I think it's time to punt for next year. The savings we're talking about is 0.4% of your $43 million budget. $200,000 is what I estimate. It's around the same amount of money you're getting from CARES Act. Now, I'm sure we can't use CARES Act money for this item, but there's, I'm sure, some other ways we can supplant that in the budget. Carrie is a brilliant mind. I've worked with her before, and I'm sure she's got multiple ideas we can do with other budget savings.
The Carrie does not supplant.
Correct. Right. Yep.
It is not supplant. It's not allowed in the law.
Correct. And I'm not saying supplant. I'm looking at what your purchases are going to be made in that area. And I would argue some are going to supplant, whether it's more cleaning wipes, more plexiglass, more other solutions that the superintendents of Rock County come up with following their surveys that they're going to be sending to the community. I also challenge this administrative team, how are we going to get the feedback we need from whose daycare we provide in and outside their attendance boundaries in 2 weeks? I think that we've shown from previous administrative teams that surveys don't work in Milton, if not done properly. As the 3 failed referendums, which I voted for all 3 of them, it has shown in the past. We've had some community survey issues. It's time to research those. I don't think we can get it done in 2 weeks. I have a lot of faith in this administrative team. I've worked with many of you professionally and also worked with you as a neighboring school district. I think it's time to just punt, go down the road of Middleton, Cross Plains, the Oregon school districts, the Fort Atkinsons. Look at the time they put into this, how many meetings they had, how many feedback they got from their partners, their community, as well as their vendors like Rightway. Is Rightway even in this facility tonight? And have they been part of the discussion last night? I'm gonna guess they haven't. I would also like to remind everyone what the mission of the Milton School District mission statement. And it's very clear in their mission statement that we have here, that we didn't follow part of it. The School District of Milton, in partnership with the community, carefully chosen words I might say, prepares our students for achievement and lifetime readiness for providing opportunities for all. I think it's time to punt, enjoy this listening session tonight with 75 plus people at home, over 100 some comments, multiple staff have flashed up, former superintendents have flashed up on there. I think it's time that we've gotten the interest from the public. Now it's time to get the public involved in this dilemma. I thank you.
One specific question that came up there was whether we've been in contact with our bus company in the planning and whether they're listening tonight. And I want to assure the gentleman with the questions that they are and they have been. We've been working with them to look at alternate routes, what those would look like, how we can become more efficient in our routing. They both last night and tonight were taking part virtually, so they have been very involved in the process. And I do want to remind folks that punting, if you will, is an option, but it also leaves a lot of students in dire straits. We have a system that we've shared repeatedly isn't working, not just for us as adults, but for many students. So we want to make sure that as we're looking for options, we look for ways that we can address the things that are causing problems with our system now, but also look for ways to compromise, to look for ways to limit that impact on students and families. Thank you.
Can we respond to your comments there? Sure. I'd just like to respond to that dire straits. I think many of us in this room, as well as all the feedback you've probably received on the phone and online, also are in dire straits. We are now looking at 3 months to change daycare providers, businesses that are going to lose students based on attendance areas, the lack of transparency and the lack of communication. To me, it shows that we're in dire straits as a district. I think it's also time, one thing I forgot, and I apologize for coming back up to the mic. One thing I would love for this group to come up with is how we can sell this story to the community, as I assume in reading that our operations referendum that was passed in 2016 expires after the 2020-21 school year. I assume, and that's purely assumption, that you're going to be coming back to us for more additional funds as a community. Now, I don't see how you cannot be. The $2.5 million is a significant amount of money. But I think it's time to sell the story. Make Milton the district of choice for the area. Pull in those kids from Edgerton. Again, pull in those kids. Let's build building bigger instead of saying we have to fit into this mold. We have the opportunity to sell this to our community, to ask for more, and we're going to be asking for more. So I think it's time we need to sell that story to the community that we need the choice and the transportation to allow it. Thank you.
Okay, let's give folks the opportunity to share with us that have asked for it. Jared Hergert, he's going to pass. Chelsea Holland, do you want to? And then could we have as an on deck, I believe it's Dan Leader.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Holland. I currently have 2 students that are enrolled in Milton. I'm going to have a 2nd grader and a kindergartner. I have been a single mom for the past 2.5 years. In that time, I've had to live with my parents so that I could fulfill one of my kids' dreams, and that was for me to buy my own house. They didn't talk about what they wanted for toys for Christmas. They talked about us having our own house. I was finally able to make that happen for my kids, but now when I got an email from an administrator saying, we don't know where your kid's going to be placed, you'll have to find daycare in that area, I canceled those plans because I need to make sure my kids have stability because they haven't from their past. And with you guys trying to say that open enrollment kids are going to be placed wherever there's room, what does that look for the next year? Are those kids going to be bounced to a different elementary school because there's not room at the current one? My kids have gone to West and Small Wonders. My son is so excited to go to West with his sister. He knows Mrs. Schwingles. Anytime we're there to pick up his sister, he runs up and gives her a hug, telling him that, you know, he's not going to go there. Breaks my heart. With a lot of this coming about, I know there's questions. Are the lines going to change in the future? What are you going to do then? Tell those parents that already have changed their lives, their livelihoods, their kids' daycares, their kids' schools? Oh, sorry, got to change again. Is there any thought about the future of how those lines are going to look? Because I know it's something that's going to have to be done. Our community is building. It is growing huge. I went to Milton and always said growing up, I'd never put my kids in this school district. Well, guess what? I moved back to this area after being out of the area for 7 years because my kids needed to go to this school district. And now saying that they won't possibly go to the same elementary school every year, it's shocking. It makes me rethink, did I make the wrong decision coming to this school district? Did I make the wrong decision of thinking of opening and enrolling them, of being a mother and giving them their own space and helping them fulfill stability, mental health by trying to provide them their own house, but yet it could change. My 6-year-old has ADHD. She doesn't do well with change. She can't be on medication because it affects her mentally and puts her into depression. If I would have to pull her out of her current daycare, first of all, the financial aspect on me, she would feel my stress. And then trying to find a new daycare and trust somebody. There's been talk of, well, this daycare is going to lose kids, so these kids can be filled with that daycare spot. Would you walk up to a stranger and say, well, this is my only option. Here you go, have my kid? I don't think so. That's something you guys need to look at.
We protect our children. You need to help us. Sending these kids to the YMCA or YWCA after school or before school care is going to be a huge culture shock to these kids that are used to being home with their daycare provider. They're used to having a book corner that they can go curl up in a chair and read a book. They're used to the same kids that they've been with since infants. And now you want to pull them away? And then looking at the aspect of cost for parents to send their kids to the before and after school care. There's one parent who I'm in contact with, currently sends her child to the YWCA before and after school at Consolidated. Now you're telling her that she's got to use the YMCA before and after school care because that's where her child has to go to school. That's over a $500 increase every year for her. How is that possible? It's a financial burden on parents. The wait list to get into the before and after school care program is ridiculous. You have to reserve your spot by July 1st with the YMCA to be able to have a spot for the beginning of the school. If you don't, you won't have a spot for a couple weeks in the beginning of the school year until they can figure it out. So with parents right now on the edge of not knowing what we're gonna do, and there might not be a decision until after July 1st, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to pay for 2 spots because they already have a spot at their old school that they registered for last year in March? That's something you guys really need to think about. How are we affecting our parents' financial burden because you guys can't figure out how to efficiently hold a public forum before making a decision, and without involving the public, you're in a meeting like this with hundreds of upset parents. I know one parent has already personally pulled their child from the school district because they're in open enrollment. 2 days before this article was published, she spoke to the principal at East and was told, yep, your child is going to go here next year. Why wasn't she told? So now she pulled her child because the education that she got at East, she wanted again. But since it's not guaranteed, she's decided to actually pay extra and send him to a private school where there's smaller class sizes because there's so much uncertainty in this school district right now. You're going to cause people to close their daycares. What happened to supporting local? Because it's definitely not in the Milton School District. Thank you.
It always is. Dan Leader and Scott Weber-Paul, if you wanted to be on deck, please.
Hi there, my name's Dan Leader. Thanks for holding the meeting tonight and listening to all of us. There's been quite the turnout tonight. Looks like over 150 people that are concerned between online and here in person. A lot of different concerns have been brought up. You know, I hope that you as an administration and school board will seriously consider the major concerns and proposals that are brought up today and make this right. It's not too late to make this right. This change has not gone into effect. You should delay this change. You should form a committee to find out a solution that works for our community and kids and work through these complicated issues and community involvement and support. There's a lot going on here that everybody's brought up, and we need to have a committee to work through all these problems. My question is that, you know, and I really would like to hear from both the administration and the school board on my question. After all this feedback and serious concern, what are the next steps? And how will parents and families be kept involved in the process so we can affix this abrupt decision?
I think the specific question there was around what are the next steps. We've spent a lot of time listening both last night, tonight, in email exchanges with folks and phone calls and meetings with folks. And people are bringing some ideas that we want to look at if they can be woven into our system. So I think next steps are our administrative team is going to be meeting over the next couple of days to look at all the different ideas that have been brought to us, look through if there is a way that we can solve the significant problems that we have with our current system, and also find ways to weave something into that system that allows us to address the concerns that people are raising. It can't be one of those without the other, though. We can't address concerns that people are bringing up right now without finding solutions to the problems that exist in the current system. So next steps are us to look for some options, weigh some different things. I know one of the speakers earlier had said that they had a plan that they were going to send to us, so we might get some emails tonight or tomorrow to look at too, with some things that we hadn't heard yet. We have an upcoming school board meeting on June 22nd. It's 2 weeks from tomorrow. So we would bring information back to the board at that meeting. We wouldn't have to wait until that time. If there is something a change that we'd like to make to our administrative guidelines based on the information that we've gotten, I think the sooner we can get that rolled out to families, the better. So we would be in contact both in the upcoming days with information, and then bringing information formally to the school board at that June 22nd meeting. And thank you for your questions.
Do you have a question?
Can we get any kind of commitment from the board with all the uncertainty of when we will have a drop dead date of when we'll have an answer, and when we will know when our kids are going to school so we can start making those childcare arrangements?
It's probably not the board's obligation to give you that date. It's our administrative folks that have to implement that system, if you will. Technically, the only thing the board has done is set the elementary boundaries, which can be amended. I mean, that's not unreasonable if it makes sense to do that based on a path forward here. So the next board meeting, the only action I foresee is amending those boundaries if we choose to do that. And that's in 2 weeks. Changes that Rich indicated there can happen tomorrow or Friday or next week, as soon as they take a course on addressing any of those issues or finding a solution. So the board and the administration work together, but board sets the policy, the administrators administer it. Administrative guidelines give them, the framework by which they, carry out that policy.
Work with them to promise us a drop dead date of when we need to start arranging childcare for our children.
I can address that. As we mentioned, that June 22nd is the next board meeting, so that would be the next opportunity for us to bring something back to the board. But as Joe said, for changes in that those administrative guidelines, we don't have to wait until that date. And I understand where we are in our time frame too, that people want answers and want to find out where we're going to fall on this. And I would see that we're going to try to get something out to families either by the end of this week or the very early part of next week with information on what we're thinking based on our conversations over the next couple of days.
My question isn't, can you give us a guideline? My question is, can you give us a guaranteed placement of where our children need to go to school so that we can start planning childcare?
And the date that will happen will depend on what changes we make to the plan that's in place right now. People are requesting that we make changes to the plan that's in place right now. If we didn't make any changes to that plan, we'd be able to get that information to you quite quickly. But based on the feedback that we're getting from people, I think that there's a need for us to look for some different options and get those options. We want to get out to people as quickly as possible. We want the turnaround on that to be as quickly as possible. But we also want to be thoughtful over the next couple of days about what those potential changes could be. A drop dead date is going to be dependent on if there's no it's going to depend on whether there's changes or not and what those changes are. Yes. Correct.
Why you need to extend it, and that's one of the first reasons I've had with a lot of these processes. Answers don't come easy because people don't want to say and tell you that that's not going to happen. I'm sorry, I've been in positions where I've had to say that. Not easy, but when there is no answer, that saying I don't know or no, I don't know right now is okay. I just get that off my chest because
yeah.
Listening to many people, administrative side, your side, that matters some of us. Not speaking directly to it. So I'm sorry.
For me, and I don't know if this clears it up, and I don't want to muddy it anymore for sure, but the easy answer would be to say we can get that to you by the end of this week because we're not going to change anything. The plan is in place and we're going to stick with that plan. But I know that doesn't solve some of the issues that you've brought to us, and we need a couple days to sort out. Now that we've listened to people, we need a couple days to sort out what the best path forward is. I mean, we didn't come to this meeting with a plan in place because we want to listen to your thoughts and then look at how we can change our plan. So to circle all the way back to the original question, what are the next steps? Next steps are we're going to spend the next few days looking at the plan that's in place right now, and are there some ways that we can change it that still address the needs that are in place and help provide some relief and support for families. I can't say that we'll have that all finalized by a certain date because it will depend on what that looks like. I can say very clearly that we want to get that taken care of as soon as possible for you, and we'll work our tails off to get that done as soon as possible for you.
I guess I just want to make sure that we're not, maybe this isn't the right phrase, but dragging our feet so long that those of us that do require changing daycares can no longer get into daycare for the first day of school.
I can say really clearly we have no intent to drag our feet. Our intent is to jump into the comments that we've heard from people and get information out and then get the ball rolling, for sure. Thanks.
Would it be safe to say that at the drop dead date of by our next board meeting, 22nd at 6:30, that meeting, by the end of that, it should be on our agenda to talk about, we're bringing the board here. I know myself and the board member would want to have that back on the agenda, that ideally sooner, but no later than that meeting would be a date that
that would be a date where we will have that information, but I can't guarantee that by that date we'll let everyone know what school they're going to attend, because if we're going to change the boundaries from what the board approved before, that will need to take place on the 22nd. So the drop dead date of having information of what the plan is going to be to people would be by the end of that school board meeting. Correct.
So you would have the information of what changed, if something changed. That would then cause the next step of placing children based on if and what has changed.
No. But if
Like, are you looking for your child's placement by a certain date? Soon?
That's how I understood the question.
Or when are we going to provide an update to how we're handling this policy and situation?
My biggest concern is right now, my child goes to Consolidated, so she attends the YWCA enroll her before and after care program, which I've already paid for.
I can address one thing on that.
I understand.
For sure.
That's
Okay.
not my point.
Okay.
My point is, if I have to switch to the YMCA, according to them, if you do not enroll by July 1st, they will not guarantee placement on day one. So how do I go to work on day one when my child can't have before and after care?
Yeah, and we've been working with the YWCA and the YMCA, and they understand the situation right now, and they've been They've given us assurances that if people, there was a question earlier about if I've made a deposit to one of them, will I be able to get that money back? They've given us assurances that if someone has to leave their program because of the changes that the district puts in, that they'll give a refund of that deposit. And they've also said that they'll be willing to work with families on those deadline dates. And we'll continue to work with them on, it'll help if we know the specifics of your situation. So if you touch base with us, we'll keep working. We've touched base with them, and they've said that they'll be willing to be flexible with those dates.
Is there any, so, I mean, I enrolled on day one for an after program from Consolidated. I'm guaranteed a spot. At this point, if I have to go to East, what is my guarantee that I have a spot?
We will.
That's not something that you guys can offer.
No.
There's not a guarantee that there are openings. I've had a communication with AJ Melody at the YMCA, at the W.
I understand.
Why? So.
But will there still be openings once a decision is made?
I can't guarantee that either.
Right, so at this point, do I need to enroll my child in 2 different daycares to guarantee that I have childcare?
I think we need to wait on the decision that the board and administration made. So for now, my suggestion, take your meeting, we need to sit tight until the final decisions are made on where students are attending school.
When you're pregnant, you look for daycare for 6 to 9 months out before you're gonna need it.
Right.
You don't throw this at parents with 2 months to figure it out. Yeah, it's good to hear the assurances, but unless you can give the assurance that you're gonna come over and babysit my kid, it doesn't really mean anything.
Let's see if we can get through the rest of the folks that want to comment. Scott, thank you for your patience. And on deck, if I could have Amanda Croft. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5.
I first want to say thank you to the school board for being here tonight. And thank you, several of you responded to my wife's email that she sent several days ago. Got some really good responses, and I want to thank Mr. Dahman as well for, we played phone tag for a little bit. We actually never actually connected, but you were very responsive, and I do appreciate that. I just wanted to let you know that.
You left a lot of messages.
Yes. So I'm going to talk about, start out talking about kind of a smaller population of students who might be especially affected by this. I want to speak about children who have gone through adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. These children have experienced more in their short lives than many adults do in an entire lifetime. Adverse childhood experiences are negative, life-altering events experienced by a child. Some of these ACEs include, but are not limited to, divorce, addiction, abuse, neglect, loss of income by a parent, which it sounds like some daycares that could happen to, or a traumatic death. And in the example of our family, our 2 children experienced 2 deaths of immediate family members in less than 2 years. The staff at Milton West has done a phenomenal job with our children and have fostered relationships with them that have helped them grow in all aspects of their lives. And it would be very detrimental for them to lose those established relationships. For many, adverse childhood experiences are not seen or known, and the school is a child's only safe space and the only normal they have in their life. The district spends a great deal of time educating the staff through professional development that every circumstance children find themselves in at a young age creates brain connections that last a lifetime. Staff are trained to understand challenging behaviors as a result of traumatic experiences that create connections in that child's brain. These traumas don't have to be the big ticket items like abuse or neglect. They can be small things such as making children lose their school family during a pandemic. Why would we intentionally cause this harm, and was it taken into consideration when the plan was put into place? For us, it's not worth the price of a shorter bus ride or being closer to school. In the FAQ, it was stated that by having consistent, clearly defined attendance areas, there will be a more equitable system. In the short term, though, how is it equitable to uproot these students from a school where they are thriving, where they are with staff who understand and may know their stories? What about students with special needs? How is it equitable to uproot students from their IEP team that they have known for years? Successful therapeutic relationships take time to develop, and they result in increased targeted student outcomes, something that we know the district wants to see. And what about the incomplete third graders? With this policy, third graders who are affected will experience 4 different learning environments in 3 years: their established school, virtual learning, their new school, and then Northside. I challenge you to find a single mental health professional that would say that this is the best practice. And some of this has been touched on, but I'm going to read through it anyway. It's stated in the FAQ that you only grant limited exceptions in cases where specific academic programs are not offered at all schools or to balance class sizes. You are, however, making an exception for School District of Milton staff to request where their children attend elementary school as long as there are openings. Surely there can be exceptions made for students who are already at their established elementary schools and implement new policy for incoming 4Kers, or give those parents the opportunity to petition for an exception and implement this policy with gradual steps over the course of the next several years. And this was also answered. It was identified that 10 to 15%, or 132 that we know of, children will be affected by this policy. We, along with many others, I'm gonna leave that part out because that's asking why there wasn't an exact number, but there is now. The truth is, though, that even though the number is 132, that every single one of these elementary students will be affected either through moving schools or loss of personal relationships. That's not just 132, that's all elementary students across the board. We don't disagree that this decision will be beneficial in the long run. In the short term, it is detrimental to families and children in our community, academically, social, emotionally, mentally, and financially. The district presents itself as being well-versed in the areas of trauma-informed care and providing supportive, consistent learning environment for children, but this decision absolutely falls short in providing that. It has been said that there is not a good time to implement these policies, but certainly there is a better time than during a global pandemic when we don't even know what school will look like in September, or with only 2.5 months until the start of the school year. Our children, our community, and our nation are all hurting and grieving. Please don't add a larger burden to our children and families. I think a misconception is that parents don't want the inconvenience of a new school. You obviously heard that that's not the case, but it's so much more than that. Milton should pride itself on how we put children first and keep them happy, healthy, and whole. Is this plan what is in the best interest of children, or the children in our district? The answer is no. We strongly encourage all of you to reconsider this plan or find an alternate way to implement this plan. And we've heard from at least one other gentleman who has a plan, and I'd love to work with them. And I feel that a lot of the information given in the in the fact sheet here, the FAQ that was online is very, I don't want to say vague, but doesn't give specifics. If you want to help come up with a plan, we need numbers, not just how many students are being affected from their home address, but from daycares. Numbers of just all across the board. Just hard information that's more than just the generalities that we have with many of the FAQs that have been put out here. So. That is all I have. My one other point I had is already covered, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Amanda Croft, and if I could have Christine Dar.
Can I say a couple of words to that, please?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So most of you have only met me as the greeter last night and the greeter tonight. My name is Susan Probst, and I'm the Director of Student Services. And whether we go ahead with this plan, or we make adjustments to the plan, or we whatever we end up doing, your student services team and your teachers are so committed to your kids getting really good things. It has been a commitment at the 4K3 level for the last 3 or 4 years. That's part of my job, is to oversee the direction of the counselors, the school psychs, the social workers, the nurse, to take a look at that universal, that second step lessons. If you've watched some of Renee Murphy and Terry Olson's videos that they sent home during the virtual, and if you haven't, go back and take a look at those. But no matter what comes out of this, that team in whatever building is truly committed to your students. Part of the comments that the gentleman made are things that your admin team had talked about when we started to even explore any direction. It's one of the reasons that they've been so committed to wanting to keep kids in the same spot. We see lots of kids come into the district that have experienced a lot of things, and we find out, we use that iceberg symbol of we can only see this much, and there's so much more underneath. And it's trying to build the capacity of all teachers and all paras, the custodian, the food service people, whoever is in contact with your students, to try to wrap around them. You're also that other very important part, because just as if we teach math one way and you teach math a different way at home, there's going to be conflict. And so somehow, wanted you to hear, we're hearing you, okay? And that gentleman spoke it so eloquently about the ACEs and the trauma-informed and the trauma-sensitive practices, that those are things that are on our mind, okay? We were already talking about what are we gonna do with COVID before any of the attendance things came up to make a decision. What are we gonna do for those third graders that have to go to fourth grade? They need to say goodbye to people in their third grade level. What about the sixth graders? It impacts them too, to go to seventh grade and not be able to say goodbye. And even weird little eighth graders who are going to the high school really do actually want to say goodbye to their building. So there were already conversations in place for that social and emotional, but we also don't have it figured out because we don't know what August and September is going to look like. But your team is very committed. When that student services team heard that there was a possibility that something might change in the lives of the children that they touch every single day, they immediately contacted me and said, Susan, we have to do some talking about this. Because if you go this route, we want to look at what kind of supports we need to have. And if we go this route, we have to look at what kind of supports we need to have. We realize we don't always get to make the decisions, but our job is to wrap around the children to make sure that they feel loved and connected no matter where they are and no matter who they're working with. Okay? And sorry I interrupted you, but yeah.
Thank you. Chris, could you share your, well,
You are the reason, and teachers are the reason everyone is in this room. Simple as that. Has absolutely no other reason besides that. I mean, they can put boundaries however they want, but I mean, some of the teachers that are in Milton are some of the best teachers in the state.
Well, and I'll vouch for that. Because I have worked a lot of different places. This is my last spot. I usually switch jobs every 3 to 5 years because I get antsy. Okay, but I love kids. It's why I do what I do. I don't work with special ed kids because I can't get a job someplace else. I'm relatively.
Feel good about yourself.
All right, well, thank you. And we love it when we can connect with, we know we can't make a difference in a child's life without your support. We know that. If there's conflict, that child senses it. And a couple of parents brought it up. They said, my kid feels that strain at the end of the day, and we know we have to be connected to make really good things happen. All right, so I will shut up the rest of it.
thank you. We have just a couple or three left here. And I think Amanda is on cue. And then Christine, do you want to be on deck?
Thank you. And thank you to the board members for coming here tonight. I know that you didn't have to, but I know that it means the world to us. And I just really wanted to thank you for that. This is the scariest thing that I've ever done. I haven't been in this room since 2003, and I see some fellow classmates and a couple of teachers. And I moved away from Milton. I wanted to get out of here. I had a family. I started my family, and I thought, where do I want to raise that family? I moved right back to Milton. And I love this community. So I just wanted to say hello to everybody. And the main reason why we're here tonight, a lot of things that I'm hearing, I wrote this big fancy speech, but I just can't read it off of paper. Some of you have had some great suggestions and great ideas, and I really urge the school board and the administration to reconsider and just kind of pause the brakes a little bit, especially with the pandemic that's going on. Because if our children don't return to schools this fall, it is going to be very, very hard for them to start new schools. It's going to be hard to build those relationships, and they need those relationships to grow emotionally and socially. And I know that I'm a parent that really relies heavily on daycare, especially on non-school days. And show of hands, how many parents in here, this is going to affect your daycare? I mean, a lot. And it's really, really hard to find great daycare. I know that when I moved back to Wisconsin, I was on a wait list for 2 years to get into a daycare center. I finally got into that daycare center, and at the end of the school year last year, we had to leave that daycare center, and my son was in therapy all summer long. And with the help of YMCA, Mel Beats was amazing. He's completely turned it around. And I would hate to have him go through that all over again and lose his security, lose his YMCA family, especially when you're already busing from the YMCA to his school. So we are never home. 100%, he will never ride that bus to and from our house until he is old enough to stay at home by himself. So I just really would like you to reconsider and take into consideration and maybe make those exceptions for us parents that rely on those daycare centers, that is our home base. That is where our children need to be, because unfortunately, I leave my house at 6:45 in the morning and I don't get home until 5 p.m. And I'm sure that many people are in that situation, and things aren't the way that they were 20 years ago when we were children. We don't have grandparents or, our parents. A lot of our parents still work. We don't have the luxury of being able to quickly find daycare. And, nothing against the school that I will have to go to. It's one of the best in the state, if not the best elementary school in the state. But I will lose my non-school day daycare. And I just don't want my son to feel and see me stressing about something that's completely unnecessary. So thank you for hearing me. I know that I didn't speak exactly to what I wanted to, but I hope I kind of got my point across a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Christine, and if I could have Caitlin Cadd on deck if she wants to speak. Okay. That's fine. I have two beyond Caitlin, so we're winding down. If you do want to speak, we can work with that. Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, I'm Christine Dar. I'm a winger. I don't plan to write anything down, which is both interesting and dangerous. So I just like to give some backdrop into my personal situation. I am not originally from Milton. I chose to move to Milton about 11 years ago. I'm employed as a social worker within Rock County. I chose to move to a home that was within the Milton School District. I grew up in Whitewater, super rivals, but if I had to pick one, that was what it was. Didn't know if I was ever even going to have kids. Well, here I am now, single mother of a 7-year-old, soon to be 8. I am significantly disappointed with the communication, significantly disappointed in the timing. When we talked about the ACEs and the trauma, specifically work in the population of children that have experienced abuse and neglect and trauma. Now, to my son's credit, the only trauma that he has is me as his mother. But I even have chosen to not take him to daycare before school. He was getting on the bus at 7:52, giving me 8 minutes to get in the car to get to work because I wanted to reduce that level of transition for him in the morning. Where I live is about 2 miles from Consolidated, and my situation is not as the same, but like many others, is my situation as a daycare. My son's daycare is like a rock throw right out of my house. It is 1 mile from my house. I can't fathom why we would choose for where my daycare is located 1 mile, which is still just 2-something miles from Consolidated, but she's now in the West District. So what am I supposed to do? I mean, this is a karate chop right to the neck. I am literally playing Russian roulette that you guys are going to come to your senses and do something, because I don't have a plan for my kid next year. I am a working single parent. To my knowledge, there are no licensed daycare facilities within the consolidated district lines that you have drawn out. There are some family daycares, to my knowledge, but I can't imagine that within my subdivision, which is a large subdivision with all those working families, that they are going to even remotely be able to accommodate having childcare drop off, because most of them work. I mean, granted, some of our two-parent families, maybe they can swing it with a neighbor, I don't know. I'm on my own here. I am not alone in this. I ask for some level of reconsideration in the lines, especially as it relates to transportation. I have friends that live a mile away from Consolidated that never even use busing, and are now going to have to get all the way bused into Milton. I can't imagine that in a city where you can pedal a bike from one end to the other in just a matter of minutes, not even maybe break a big sweat, that we can't make this work. There has to be something that we can do with the amount of time on the buses to let it happen. They need to have some sort of leniency. We need to have some sort of bigger scope here, because the daycare situation, like when we talked about the 100 and some kids that were in there, it's at least 2, 3, 4 times that this is going to impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Caitlin Cadd, and then Chris, you are actually up next.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I come to you here tonight as a parent and also a child care provider. I have worked with Milton schools, with our children's school, Milton West, for 6 years since my son was in kindergarten. I have watched our school work wonderfully with parents. I've watched our administration work with parents. I worked with them on getting our drop-off area for a safer drop-off for our students. I know that we can work together to find a better solution. I'm not saying we don't need changes. I think change is great, and it's not something we're always comfortable with, but we can make it happen. I just ask that we find a better solution for our students and our children. Our children will be returning to school this fall from all sorts of family situations. Their safe environment, their stable environment is school. Some of these kids have watched their parents go through job losses and financial strains. We have 2 school psychs for 4K through 3 is what I understand. And so you're going to add in, on top of them dealing with these kids' emotional, maybe some trauma, and then add in the school change to our students. I feel like that's a lot of pressure, and it's gonna fall on our teachers. Milton is known for having amazing teachers, and we love the teachers of Milton, and that's not something I want them to have one more pressure. I want them to be able to welcome our children back and our children to feel that welcome. I feel like, emotional needs are going to be hard to meet as it is. If we go back to school and these staff members are having to wear masks, I can speak to this as working in childcare for the past 15 years. The best way to get a child who is having a hard time to warming up to you is to get close to them, to sit with them and read a story, to guide them with their hand. I often look out my patio window with my daycare kiddos to distract them when they're having a hard morning. When my child goes to a new school and that teacher is in a mask and they can't be within 6 feet, how are we going to get these children in the building trusting these adults? I want my child to know that their school is a safe place. I ask that you keep that in mind with your decision. I also come to you with this daycare provider concern. I've had a child with me who I've watched since he was 5 months old. His parent is a staff member in the district. We have talked about this, when schools closed, schools might not be opening full-time in the fall. We might be some days on, some days off. And I said, don't worry, I can take your 2nd grader too. I will make this work for you. You are a staff member. You don't need to worry. I've got you. This family is like family in my home. To now be able to say, I might not be able to take your child because I cannot physically drop off a 4-year-old at West if they did morning and then get to East to drop my daughter off, which child is going to need me more? And I shouldn't have to choose between them. The other case would be he goes in the afternoons and that family can have me in the mornings, but they now have to find afternoon childcare, which is another added expense. I feel like childcare maybe was not thought about in this. And my concern is for the families. I want them to feel like their children are safe being dropped off. And I want to see this 5-month-old that I have watched since a baby go to kindergarten. And I feel like that will be taken away if my child has to move. I ask that the board reconsider this, and as well as our administration, and consider phasing in the process and starting the next year, giving this time, taking a pause and phasing this into the following year. I feel like this is a very rough process. It's going to rush parents for childcare. We don't know how the fall is going to look. My question to administration is, the YMCA is who you are partnering with and offering to families. Do we know what their COVID response is? Are they going to be able to stay open if this hits again? I mean, nobody can really predict what's going to happen, but what if they have to lower their capacity of children? What if they, like many big daycares, have to close again, like many did in March? Then what do these parents do?
Got a couple left. Chris is up next. Is Adam online? We'll have him as on deck, and I'll have Chris go next if he would be willing.
Willing, I don't know about that. First of all, I am not a public speaker. I don't do this. I spend my break, 15-minute break and half-hour lunch reading this, so I'm going to read it. So some of it might be reiterated from other people, but it needs to be said. First of all, my background, I work at a chemical plant. I work with one of the administrator's husbands. I know about safety. It is safety to the nth degree on everything that we do. So I understand where they say the children need safety transferring buses. I understand this. I know about making difficult decisions. I am in maintenance. I'm senior guy there. Manager's new. All the other guys are young in the maintenance department. I am the first one in the SCBA. I'm the first one in a hazmat suit. I'm the first one in a hole. You know, I am the one that ultimately makes a lot of the decisions. I know what it's like to make a difficult decision. And I understand you can't make everybody happy. I understand you can't make everybody's kid feel the way that they need to feel. But in saying that, a few of the things were left out in this process. And, you know, it doesn't directly involve my kids, so I'm not going to kind of bring them up. My one's 9 going to north side. The other one's just jumping into kindergarten. And, you know, my 9-year-old, she would have a huge problem. Anxiety to the nth degree. So I'm just going to start here. I was born and raised in Milton. I went through Consolidated, went all the way up, graduated, knew quite a few people in here. Typically quiet person, don't really say a whole heck of a lot. For the children, learning environments play a significant role in student success. It makes sense that a student would do better when they learn in a positive environment. After all, most people would agree that some environments are more conducive to learning and academic performance. A student taking a test in a quiet, peaceful room will almost certainly do better than a student taking the same test in a loud, chaotic room. Many factors affect a student's learning. Educators can begin to make changes that will improve learning environments or the changes and hamper the children's learning. Just because something makes sense, however, does not mean that our educators and policymakers have the information that they need to make a better decision that will help the students reach their goals. A few examples of the goals that are needed for the children are safety and order. We've already touched bases on the safety end of it, on how they feel busing could be more safer. Security and stable environments, in-home daycares, regular daycares, licensed daycares, unlicensed daycares, YMCA, this all plays a part in that step. Teachers' relationships. These children, I know my daughter loves Mrs. Schwingles. I've had many of conversations with Mrs. Schwingles. Good, bad. There's a good one at 11 in the morning. There was a bad one at noon. It's just the way it is. But my daughter absolutely loves her. Academic expectations of improvement. I mean, they set forward what they need to be at, where they want them to be, and they push them to be there. These teachers know these kids. They know them from being in school with them before they're even in their grade to be in their class. They know where they need to be. The teachers know where they need to be. Leadership and professional development. There are leaders, there are followers. You know, that's just the way the world works. Some kids don't need it. Some other kids do need it. Students who feel safe at school and have a stable environment within the school and at home where they are expected to form positive relationships with their teachers and peers have a notable advantage over students who attend schools without these beneficial traits. I get tired of hearing from people, kids are strong, kids are resilient, they will bounce back. I wholeheartedly disagree. I'm a guy, and I disagree. Let's figure that out. Kids are weak. That is why we have to care for our children. We make decisions for them. We make the difficult decision for them, for their benefit. Children are not resilient. They just have not learned to cope with what's going on. So what they do is they put a mask on. They hold it in. That is not the way that it needs to be. I tell my daughter all the time, you have something to say. Instead of crying and hiding, say it. I can help you. I can help you understand. I've been through this. They do not bounce back. They learn to guard themselves. They figure, oh, this year I'm in this school. This year I'm in this school. I had friends this year over here. My daughter went for open enrollment to Consolidated. Her friends, now that she's been 3 years through West, her most favorite friends are still at Consolidated. Bonds are made and bonds are held. Unfortunately, I have no other way to say it. Some children handle, some children handle anxieties with flying colors. Some children handle it poorly with no fault of their own, as they are learning with every moment of the day. For example, children learn what the letter E looks like, how to make the sound R. I'm saying this because my daughter is an IEP. If she goes to Consolidated, she loses her IEP teachers that she absolutely loves. If she goes to West, she keeps her. I'm close to Consolidated. She's placed right now technically in West. So there's a conflict kind of in either way you go. But she's young enough, she's going to be able to adapt. A lot of these kids are not in the position where they're going into kindergarten and can just adapt into one school and stay there. But that doesn't mean that next year the lines ain't going to be redrawn because of the intake of kids. So I mean, it needs to be thought out. Some of them, they don't know where they're going to sleep at. Motel 6. I know that's reality. Somebody in here knows that. Is somebody going to make fun of their birthmark that they have on their face? That's reality. My oldest daughter. Fortunately, making them to move schools, leave their school families, counselors, speech therapists, and child care families is one of the most major decisions that can be softened. It doesn't need to be a hard, fast decision. I understand the money behind it, but it can be softened. Noah kind of is an advocate for the providers. Being clear, my wife is a provider. She has an in-home daycare. She grows or netted $7,000 next year. She loses it, I will take her to daycare because it is not in our finances to sit there and run zero. She cannot sit at home and take care of kids and not make any money. It won't happen. Many of these children that are being affected are in the rural areas, and they have been with providers since they were infants. As their parents must work to make ends meet and provide for the child. Many providers have had multiple children under their care for 10 plus years. And now those children are adults with kids, and they also bring their kids back to them. They all daycares, they hold a waiting list a mile long. Who wants to be with children 12 hours a day? I don't know about you, but I don't. Believe me, I have two, and no, not happening. The child treats the provider's home as their own, a known safe place. They know where everything is. They know what they can and cannot do because they have grown up with that provider. They have a shoulder to cry on when somebody takes their toy, or they also have a shoulder to cry on when the police are at the house the previous night. The in-home provider is another mother to every child. Many providers are open from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Which add up to over 60 hours per week. At the end of the year, if you figure out what the hours they work and what they get paid near minimum wage. They sacrifice their living space. They sacrifice their sanity. All along this out of a simple desire to make a difference in a child's life. At the center of the child's day is structure with lessons, playing, meals, naps, quiet time. This extends to before and after school children even then. They are taken in when they get off the bus and treated as though they're family. I know that many children at this moment that have parents going through difficult divorces and children with disabilities, among other difficulties, that cry at the end of the day with the provider that they do not want to go home to their normal place. Not every child comes from a home where both parents make $80,000 a year, two parents, and are advanced in their grade level. Some struggle, some have a difficult life. The compassion these children and parents are receiving cannot be replaced by a college student or aspiring teacher at the YMCA wraparound care. A program that does not support families on school cancellation days, holidays, holiday breaks, summer breaks, or any other day the school is closed. Granted, it may work out for some families, and I'm happy that there's the option. I mean, the best thing about anything is having options. Having one clear way is not the way. To take busing as support away from these small businesses will cause them to close. As I already explained, my wife is not going to transport. She cannot afford to buy a car. I cannot afford to buy her a car to transport kids. It will not happen. So kids will be removed, which will reduce the net that she makes. It is just something we've already had the discussion. The other providers will incur financial hardships in addition of financial issues that currently with none of them having a feasible way to transport children that go to schools outside of the boundary they are located. A little note on kind of the budget end of it. I understand that, you're saving money on buses, but if you compare the city of Janesville, I believe the majority of the daycares are in the city. City bus to transport children. Milton, in contrast, has a lot of daycares in rural areas to support the rural families. No kid can walk to consolidated schools. Impossible. So they must be bused. Milton, they are not in the city, and the providers do not operate in the city doing this work. So they need the busing system to help support the business. We as a Milton community have proven to support our small businesses. The Milton Family Restaurant is still open. Arndt's Mini Mart is still open. God, when we were in fourth grade. The small retail shops that line all of the main streets, our private in-home daycares and providers, and our school district, that would just pass a $59 million referendum. Everybody, whether they voted no or not, we are supporting you. We understand what we're through. People are happy, people are sad, but we support it. We see it, we enjoy it, and our kids will enjoy it. The finance speaker last night's evening described that the district's budget deficit from last year of $160,000 due to the pool. She also explained that there are already studies in the works to reduce the costs that do not include the busing situation. There should be savings on no longer leasing the Small Wonders location and all the costs that are associated with it. Granted, the teachers and staff will probably be moved. I understand there are unknowns of what the pandemic will create with the funding from the state, and the open enrollment amount might change depending on what happens. Chances are people want to come to this district. I want to go to this district. I moved out here and moved back. With the cooperation with Brightway, I'm sure cost savings can be found. As your estimate, every route is about $45,000. Everything can be looked at. They drop kids off across the road from my house. They drop kids off at my house. Why is that not one bus stop? Why is that not added together? I understand 20 kids takes time to get off, but 10 kids, one here, drive 2 seconds, 10 kids there, takes more time than 20 kids. I believe the few in-home providers provide a high-quality service that deserve the support of all the community, including the school board and supervisors. Also, the creating of hard boundaries should be done in a tiered fashion, as it is not to eliminate the goals of every one of the children and help them succeed. The boundaries will help new to the district children that are already in the midst of change, and it will help them settle in. What better way to get them settled in into the coming years than place them where they need to be and where they know that they're going to be? But to take kids that know where they are and move them abruptly with huge changes, is that the answer? And why hang the weight of balancing the budget on the shoulders of K through 3 busing? I mean, it's a drop in the bucket. I understand sometimes you run a deficit, sometimes you run a positive. So unfortunately, you can't sit there and just make a hard, fast decision. It is difficult, it affects a lot of people, and that's why we're here today. Thank you for my rambling.
Thank you. Do you know if our online gentleman is available? He's off again. I apologize for that. I have one left on the list then, Dan Bentz. Did you want to speak? Okay. I have two then. Okay. Yep. I see you. Sir, do you want to be on deck?
Good evening. And we're at 2212 West Glenmore Lane. We currently live 1 mile away from Consolidated School Road. Your newly adopted boundaries are pushing us over to west. So, as I explain my case, I ask that you add an amendment to allow us to return to Consolidated School Road. When I moved to the community for my career, I researched where we wanted to live. We picked our address specifically for the Milton School District. We picked our address specifically for Consolidated School Road. Does a board member live on Consolidated School Road? Yes, sir. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. As we had children, we supported that small school through every budget cutting session. We looked forward and we supported and we took pride in that school so our kids could go there. 2 years ago, we had Dungarvan of Wisconsin put a group home right next door to us. That house can house many difficult individuals with special considerations and rehab services that they need. Very concerning to be living next door to that house when I'm not home all the time throughout the month. The only reason why we haven't moved is to stay at Consolidated School, period. For the last week when I found out about this, I have sent everybody plenty of emails. I've talked to plenty of people on the telephone to get some support. Unfortunately, I've been given contradictions. I've been given the runaround. I've been told to read the frequent asked questions. And I've spent time researching the reasons, watching the videos, reading the minutes, and this change contradicts everything that you guys have campaigned for. Everything. You talk about attending your neighborhood school. What is 1 mile away from a school any more of a neighborhood? I don't understand it. 1 mile away. I sent you the overhead map to show you the territory. I was told our road on Glenmore Lane is not allowed to go to Consolidated because you've allowed the Harmony Grove subdivision, which is farther away to Consolidated than we are, to go to that school, which is a new subdivision of 15 roads of a very populated residential neighborhood. I was told Glenmore Lane is too long and a windy, curvy road. What does geographically designed road have to do with why it can't go to a school? There are 4 families on the west side of the road. There are 4 families on the north side of the road. 2 of those families are faculty members. The majority of them the majority of them drive their kids to the school because we are so close. But yet, a subdivision farther away is given permission to go to Consolidated instead of us. And we now have to go to west, of which the area that I'm showing you is surrounded by West territory, to the north and to the east of it. I also emailed you a zoomed in picture of this to show you the difference in the subdivisions and the road. 1 mile away. I also don't understand how your boundaries for Consolidated School Road go west of Consolidated School Road and north of Pennycook. Those are farm fields, people. What does a farm field have to do with the boundary? It doesn't make sense. But I have been committed to research and find out everything I can about this. And up until about a couple days ago, the superintendent was the only one that says, you know what, you might have a legitimate argument. We will consider it. Why did it take almost a week for almost a harassing amount of emails to the entire board and phone calls to the principals, of which I was told, too bad, you need to accept it. There are special services for your children to adapt and you'll be fine. Are you kidding me? We have the highest tax bracket out of the entire district. And I still can't go to the neighborhood school you campaign about 1 mile away? I don't understand it. You talk about bus rides. So I can drive my child to Consolidated, but the bus ride to West is shorter. I don't understand that. I really don't. You talk about proximity to the school. You write a memo on May 22nd saying these boundaries will allow you to go to your neighborhood school, balancing class size and proximity to your home address. How much closer do I need to be? We speak of class size. This year at Consolidated, kindergarten is 22, first grade is 21, second is 17, third is 21. I don't think there's a problem with class size. I really don't. I apologize if you took my emails harshly. My daughter loves the school. I've tried to be the best parent I could be. I go there for lunch once a week. I volunteer. I take treats. I help out when I can. Her younger sister is going into kindergarten. She comes with us for lunch. The faculty has even said, your youngest is going to thrive so well here because she knows everybody. All I wanted from day one was for anybody to say, you have a valid point, we will examine it. Excuse me, the principal from West said, there may be a chance your children can still go there. I'm sorry, a chance is not good enough when I'm 1 mile away. And I will continue to fight. I will not accept being told that I'm expecting a special circumstance. I am not expecting a special circumstance. I'm expecting what's right. And I don't know why this isn't right. So once again, I understand we've received plenty of complaints about this. You have a lot of work to do in 2 weeks. I hope that when I come to the board meeting on the 22nd, I hear an amendment to allow Glenmore Lane or Lockwood subdivision to go to consolidated school. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for being here tonight.
Can you just come up and push it for me? Thank you. So the folks that still want to comment, please share your name. I don't have any more of you on my list, so we'll certainly listen, but start with your name and make sure we understand who you are.
I'm Brian Worth. I've had students or children in the district for 7 years now, I believe 6 years actually. And the comment made earlier about punting, I love that. You threw off totally what I was going to plan to say, but before I get into that analogy, sorry. I wanted to point out to you guys, the administrators, how important this is. Not one person tonight has said that they don't want to go to West. They don't want to go to Harmony. There was a little bit about not wanting to go to Consolidated because of services, because it's a small school, but it's not that they don't want to go somewhere else. It's they want to stay where they are. Keep that in mind, and that says something about all of you guys, how good of a job you've done as teachers, administrators, and board members in providing a great environment for our kids. If they don't want to leave, we don't want them to leave. So thank you for that. One other point regarding the numbers that we talked about earlier. It was 132, I believe, for number of kids that are going to be affected. Between here and online, somebody said it was probably 150 or more that were involved. Some parents, some kids didn't have a parent at all. Some might have had 3 people involved, but that number being higher on average than the number of kids affected tells you how important this is to every single one of those 132 kids and families. So I can't stress that enough, that the support that you guys have shown by being here, the support of everybody online is great. And I hope that doesn't get lost to anyone as you're making choices going forward. And Rich, I want to apologize for earlier about the interrupting with the no comment. I should know if it was out of line, but I've always had a problem with any leader anywhere not being able to say no or I don't know. That, to me, that's a sign of a good leader. So in the end of that, we came to a great agreement. I appreciate that, and I want to apologize for interrupting. I also appreciate you earlier in the night saying that you're going to own the communication part of it and how that all worked out. Now is the time that you can correct that, though, by looking forward, getting more parents involved, either in the short term, to make a decision for what to do for August, September, and also long term for other projects that come down the road. If you do punt, give this project, the administrative guidelines lines, more time and get parent involvement. So I just hope that you get the chance to do that. So, there's a couple different reasons that, these are problems that have happened. We've talked about a lot of them, and this is where the punt thing got me thrown off. It's 4th and 20. Milton's a great school district, like I said, for many reasons. So you guys are leading. You're ahead in the game. Time's winding down. It's time to punt. It's 4th and 20. Give up the ball and move forward with a new plan. Push it back, whatever you have to do, because I know in the long term, especially if you involve the parents, a better plan can be put together. I have no doubt of that. One other benefit to punting that I thought of tonight while I was here, when it comes to the relationships and COVID-19 potentially not letting kids back into school or back into school part-time. Yes, the kids weren't going to be going back to their same teacher because it's a new school year. But how many teachers of 3rd graders know a lot of the 2nd graders already? At Consolidated, where my kids go, they probably know them all by name already. But they'll at least be familiar with them. That familiarity for the kid also, they'll have seen, Mr. Georgia every day for the last 2 years before they get to his class. So in the fall, we have to go virtual for a while. Mr. Georgia's on the screen. They're going to understand that way better than Mrs. Smith from West that they're getting moved to. That's never seen them, and the kids have never seen Mrs. West. And for the teachers, think about this one. For instance, if Mr. Georgia has a problem with a kid coming into his class, he knows to go to, I forget her name, the 1st grade teacher, and can talk to her directly. They know each other. They work in the same building for years. And that'd be the same for any other school. So let's say a kid has an issue with this virtual learning that we may be forced into again. Teachers will have the advantage of the kids staying and not shuffling everything up this year because they'll know each other better. Now, I'm not going to say the teachers don't know each other from school to school, but it's just going to be a lot smoother if we get stuck in that position with virtual learning again. And the virtual learning, you guys as an administration and the school teachers, I want to say did a great job, but it left such a void for the kids too at the end of the year. And it was addressed a little bit that those kids didn't get a chance to say goodbye. But that's another reason why punting is the way to go. Push it back, give yourselves a deadline to come up with a new plan with the parents. Somebody said December 31st, which makes sense because that gives the parents a longer period of time to find rides, childcare, all those things. If it's going to be a hard and fast time, give them plenty of time. Don't give them 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. That's all. Thank you.
More information about what was all considered. What's the data? What are the considerations that were taken into, or what are the facts that were taken into consideration to make this decision for this year? I didn't get that. And I'll tell you, I have a hard time addressing a board of professionals that I put trust in. I like data. I remember with the referendums, flyers with graphs and data. And I think people respond well to hard facts sometimes. And there was hearing, instruction time is missed regularly. How often is that occurring? Is that an issue with the attendance areas or is that an issue somewhere else? That's what I needed to hear. I wanted to understand because if you're gonna pull my son out of his school for his 3rd grade year, I want to understand. And I think I could be accepting of it if I
really truly looked at it as in a big picture, not just about our own situation. And because I'm really about, looking at the big picture. And if it is just self-serving, I'm willing to accept that I have to give it up. It's my one child for everybody else's. But you didn't even have the data of how many families are affected. Like, you only had attendance, you only had addresses and in attendance areas. You didn't even survey the community to find out what daycare providers are even in the community. Where are they serving? A simple survey monkey, I think, could have given you some of that data, at least to provide some numbers tonight in your presentation. So I didn't hear anything different in that presentation tonight than I heard before. The other thing that I just wanted to bring up was, at your last special school board meeting, Diamond, you mentioned why, that school of choice is kind of, every school is great in Milton. Like, I'm not excited about any school. It's because they have a vibe. Like you said, every school kind of has a vibe, and I agree with that. And people tend to self-select where they feel like their values are or where their kids will fit in. We lived in the Harmony Grove subdivision for 7 years. My daughter, who's going into middle school this year, attended a parochial school. So we didn't do elementary for her in the Milton School District. We made the decision to move her into Northside, her 4th grade year, with my upcoming kindergartner, with the assumption that he was going to be at Consolidated because we lived in Harmony Grove. And Consolidated felt very comfortable to me to move into the public school district because it was a smaller school. He stayed with the same class each year. And that's something I valued as a parent, but other parents love the variety of multiple kids and more, more friends to be had. But that, as a parent, that just felt right to me. So I feel like we moved in the middle of his 1st grade year. We are nowhere near, I didn't need a map to tell me, we are clearly in the east. We have been driving him to Consolidated because we as parents made the decision to move. And we made the decision to continue to drive him to Consolidated every day. If I had been told last year that this change was going to be coming in effect, I absolutely would have moved him to East on my own accord to allow him time to transition. He's not being given that time to transition. Pandemic, it's his 3rd grade year now, he can't go back. I really think, why 1 year of grace or kind of planning or gathering the actual data that you need to make a decision does a lot. It will serve me and my son. He'll get, if this, gets delayed a little bit, we'll squeak by our 3rd grade year and that he's my last little one. So, but again, I'm not just about myself. I do think it's hard for me to say you made the wrong choice, but you didn't have the information you needed. You didn't even know, you didn't do the due diligence to make this decision when you made it. And I hope you reconsider it now that you have more information.
And back over here, Leah.
So my name is Leah Zaspel. I own Zassy's Family Childcare, and I am going to offer some statistics for you. The 3 main group centers that we have in Milton are on one side of John Paul. That puts them at East. So you're telling me that those childcares have to take East kids. So their Harmony and West kids need to find somewhere else to go. That's going to leave them half full with more expenses from staff in an empty building that they will struggle financially. Now let's look at their numbers. They have 100 probably at Small Wonders, 50 at Tammy's Tender Care, another 50 maybe at the Y. So if you have 200 on the east side and half of those are Harmony and West that now need to leave, West have no group centers. We have family providers. We have 4 of us at 8 apiece. We have 24 spots and none in Consolidated and 2 in Harmony. So we have 16 spots in Harmony, and that includes siblings. So yesterday I talked about the infant spots. There are no infant spots. There's a 2-year wait list. So if you have a sibling and you're at a West or Harmony and you need to go to that side of town, you will not find childcare. Let's talk about the 3 group centers. DCF has us at 25% capacity because of COVID-19. They cannot take any of your kids if you start calling in 2 weeks because we're still in phase 1. When we get to phase 2, they can take 50% of their capacity. Again, they can't take all of the calls and you will be put on a wait list. So this is not good timing to be trying to switch daycares, and it needs to be in consideration that Harmony, Consolidated, and West do not have the need to take on the amount of families that are in those spots needed. The other thing is my families that are in Harmony or are in East or are in Consolidated, I have all of them. I have 5 littles that are outside of the West area that are with me at 7 in the morning till 5 at night, 50 hours a week. 5 years later, you're telling me, I'm sorry, because of your address, you need to go to a group center when that is not their philosophy as a parent. And after 5 years of being with me at 50 hours a week, that's detrimental to these kids. My question is, you keep saying that the address of your home is where it needs to be. My families, personally, I know they would use my address and go west in order to stay with me. It's not the elementary school that they worry about. It's their provider that they want to stay with. So I really want to stress that those 5 littles that I have that have been with me and that will be with me for 5 years prior to go, because my kids, if this is going to be a problem, they won't go to 4K. My families have chosen in the past, they get plenty of instruction from me. My kids are well prepared when they go to school. They don't need the 4K except for the extra large class social in order to get them ready for kindergarten, for the social aspect of a larger group to prepare them and get past the 8 of us. That's the only reason why they need to go. So when they get to kindergarten at age 5, I'm asking for that to be considered, to use my address. These families would choose to stay with me than to choose to go back to Harmony and find a new provider that's non-existent, or go to Consolidated after 5 years of being with me from being born with me as a provider. There's no providers in Consolidated. I'm not sure where you're going to ask them to go. But my parents, after 15 years of being in business, I have an associate degree, 3 credentials. I'm highly qualified. They like my all-natural environment, my nature-based program. They choose me for a reason, and you're taking that away from me and them because of their address. And I really want you to consider letting us keep those kids and using my address as a West school if that's what they choose, if they don't want to leave me.
I think we'll flip sides of the room just to balance. Please state your name when you start. Thank you.
My name is Melinda Meyer. I thank you guys for letting us do this. I know it's getting late and we're all exhausted, I'm sure. I just kind of wanted to give a little background. I feel that the daycare aspect was really not considered at all, and underestimated how important and how hard it is to find daycare. I have a 6-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old. When I first needed to find daycare for my newborn, I couldn't, I struggled finding a place in town. I called Zasty. She had a huge waiting list. I called Happy Times. They had a waiting list. I tried Small Wonders. They were unfortunately out of our price range. So we ended up in Whitewater because my husband works there and we did daycare there. As we kept having kids, we could not still afford, there were still waiting lists. So we still ended up in Whitewater. When my son finally was able to start 4K, I was really wanting to come move everything to daycare to Milton, because I wanted to be part of the school district that we're,
living in. We could get my son Sebastian, we could get him into Small Wonders, but we couldn't get our other two. So we had to decide, what do we do for 4K? We ended up doing open enrollment for him in Whitewater. Then we found out we were put on a waiting list for Small Wonders, and we finally got in. So we were really excited to move everybody. My question is, have you talked with the other school districts of how they do transfers and buses and things like that? With Whitewater, the elementary school that we went to for 4K, the daycare center was 1.5 miles away, if that, from the school. And my son had the 4K, he had to do transfers. He got picked up at the daycare. They had to do a transfer at the high school. My son was on the bus for probably 45 minutes. I've gone through all of that with the long bus routes, but that's what we did because of our daycare situation. We didn't really have other options. Neither one of us are from that. My husband and I are not from around here originally, so we do not have families. So we're really reliant on our daycare. They are, they get to be our second family. So I really hope you do consider the daycare aspects of it. I also have a question, I guess, about the buy-a-seat program aspect of things. So my understanding is anybody that's within a 2-mile radius, you have to find your own transportation, or if you wanted to be on the bus, you have to buy a seat. So with the elementary schools, how many, what's the radius? Are all the students that are riding the bus, are they in the buy-a-seat program, or are they getting free of charge, I guess, of it, or they fall in the aspect? Because for us, we live on North Side, we go to East, we do daycare at Small Wonders. Our bus ride is less than a minute, and we're paying the $150 next year, or this fall we'll be paying $300 because I'll have a 4K and a first grader. So I just we're in town and we're still doing the buy-a-seat. So if we're doing that, I feel like there's other people. So I don't know if there's a way where you can incorporate having parents, if they want the bus, to pay for the bus a little bit more. I don't know if that's an option. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is that we received a letter the week of Memorial Day from East that our son was going to be participating in a looping program. And the looping program is a new thing where essentially my son will have the same kindergarten teacher in first grade. And the way it was explained was that having students that have the same teacher, they grow. They are able, in the fall, they're able to adapt better, and they pick up where they left off a lot easier. So my question in that too is that, so we're saying that looping is a good thing, we're going to stay with the same teacher, but now you're introducing 2 weeks later, then it's introduced that there's going to be kids that are changing schools completely. So we're saying that looping is good, but then at the same token, you're saying some students are going to have to change, because there is a student that's in my son's class that is going to have to go to consolidated now, and he's not going to have the same teacher or possibly same daycare provider. So I really hope you guys reconsider things. I know that there's been a lot of work put into what you have already done, but I really hope you weigh the options that people have brought forward. Thank you.
And we will shift over to this side. Please introduce.
Hi, my name is Georgine Dudzik. I have a child coming into the district in kindergarten, so kind of new, was in 4K. I also have my children at Zasty's daycare. So. Sure. So I have a child in the district. I also have my children at Zasty's daycare, who Leo just spoke a minute ago. I just want to cover a couple of things, and I think one of the main things is I think we're kind of underestimating the amount of trauma these kids are going to have. As a psychologist, I've been an essential worker all this time, but I didn't really think of myself as an essential worker. I thought, the folks in the medical field, in the hospitals, those guys are the most important people. But what we're realizing is that as this starts to fade, it's the mental health workers that are really on the front end. And the amount of people that I've come across that I wouldn't see otherwise. I'm not seeing the same sort of people coming in through my doors. I'm seeing people worried about COVID. I'm seeing people worried about coming back. And these are mostly adults. So I can't imagine our little kids and how they're going to manage this. And so I don't pretend to know what your budget is. I know that I'm sure it's strapped. And I know that probably some change is needed. But I want to just echo what one of the parents said earlier, is that I think the timing is poor. I think trying to make these changes right now for these kids is, it's going to be very difficult, and we don't know what we're coming into. I don't know what I'm coming into on a daily basis working on the mental health side of this. And the other thing that happened as an essential worker, my kids had to change daycares 2 or 3 times in the beginning of this. And so I was able to find somebody that could take them. And now we say, oh, wait a minute, you can't go there because we can't bus your kids there. So I guess I would be on the side too of really thinking about, can we find some way on this daycare issue? Because it is really important for a lot of people, and probably more important than what school we go to. Like Leah said, I don't care what school my kid goes to. All the schools in Milton, I'm sure, are perfectly fine. I don't have any concern with any of them. But I can't find another daycare. So I think that's important. And then, I think, again, as other people mentioned, that we underestimated the amount of kids that are impacted by this. I get that there's a number of kids that are going to have to switch schools, but the daycare thing is a huge piece that I think we've missed. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll flip back to this side.
Okay, I just have a few comments. I kind of want to piggyback off of what Melinda said, because the looping child that she's talking about is my child. My family did the open enrollment for the last, well, my oldest son is 9 years old. We'll be going to Northside. We did open enrollment since he was 4. We picked Small Wonders specifically for the great wraparound care that they had. My family decided to do the right thing. We moved into the district 2 months ago. So now I'm being told that you're taking the wraparound care away from Small Wonders. So I have to put my little 4-year-old, she's 3 now, but when she's in 4K, I have to put her on a bus. I don't even know from where, because I'm being told that Carson now has to, I got a letter 3 weeks ago, Memorial Weekend, like Melinda said. So I hear you guys saying that you put all this thought and time and everything into these decisions, but 3 weeks ago, I got a letter to my new address, which is in the Consolidated School District, I'm now being told. And you were telling me that because of this looping, he would be going to East. He would be keeping his same kindergarten teacher. So 3 weeks ago, you didn't know this because I got this letter, and then now I'm being told that he has to go to Consolidated. I'm also being told to find a new daycare because you won't bus him from Small Wonders to Consolidated. Again, I don't even know if I would make that decision, because that would be over a 20-minute bus ride. But then so I called, and I also asked, well, we called before we moved, and we were told, yep, no matter what, your kids will stay at East, they'll stay at East. You're open enrolled, they'll stay at East. 2 months after we moved, we get a letter that they can stay at East. A week ago, we're told that they can't. And then I also asked about my 3-year-old, who will be in 4K in a year, and being told that she has to go to West. So I've got a daycare in the East District. I've got a child that was already told he was going to go to East and have his same kindergarten teacher, who we didn't get to say goodbye to, that he has to go to Consolidated now. And I have to find a new daycare to get him. I don't even know how he's going to get to school. Find him to school. And then I'm also being told that my daughter will have to go to Milton West. So I have to find a daycare in the West District as well as Consolidated District, and then also get my oldest son to Northside too. So I don't even know how this is feasible for a parent. And I'm trying not to get frustrated, but I don't even know how it's feasible. I'm leaving to the consideration of not even sending her to 4K, which is unfortunate, because for working parents, how do you get a child to 4K when it's 3 hours a day, 4 days a week? And you won't bus her from the daycare she's known since before she was even born. My family moved into this district finally after open enrolling, paying $300 for the, we were paying for the buy a seat, which I have no problem still doing. But by me moving in the district, I actually got put in a worse situation than if I would have stayed open enrolling and staying in the Janesville School District. My kids would have stayed at East, they would have stayed at Small Wonders, which I was told before we moved, and 2 months after my move, who we can't even make friends in my neighborhood because everybody's had to be in their houses for the last 2 months. So I don't even know of any daycares in the area and I'm being told that I have 2 months to figure this all out. And that I'll get a letter and I was also told that I'll get a letter at the end of June letting me know for sure where Carson has to go next year. I called the YWCA. They did not tell me, they said the $95 holding fee is not refundable. And I explained the situation. They're well aware of the Milton School District situation. They assured me that it's not refundable. So as of right now, I'm left with no choice besides to enroll my child in 2 different daycares because you guys haven't made a decision what you're even doing for school next year. I cannot pull my child from Small Wonders because if you do the every other week thing, I have nowhere to send him because the wraparound care is only at the school. So in essence, my end result is I will have 3 children at 3 different places, and you guys don't want to split up siblings, but you don't offer 4K at Consolidated. And it's extremely frustrating. I just wish you guys would consider an option of allowing parents to appeal. I asked about that. Is there an appeal? Nope. You live in Bruin, your children will go to Consolidated, and your daughter will go to Milton West. Guess you just got to find a new daycare. It's not that easy. And it's not that easy on children either. My son has already been told that he has the same teacher as last year. I haven't even told him even what's going on because I don't even have the heart to tell him that he's got to leave his daycare. He's got to leave his classroom that he was already told that he got to go to. So I just hope you guys consider an alternative and allow people to appeal or do something because from my situation, I would have been better off open enrolling still. And this is just telling me that unfortunately the open enrollment children are getting a better situation than those that are doing the right thing moving into the district. It's very disheartening. And I've heard that, and I'll be real, sorry, I'll finish here. I've heard the different options of pushing it off a year or 2, and I agree with all of that, but the grandfathering is the right thing to do. Let your child finish the school that they're at. Let their sibling finish the school that they're at, where their daycare is at. Because even if you only grandfather that child that is currently at that school, I'm in the whole situation that I am. I would at least have more time for her though. So I appreciate your time and I hope you, yes. Teresa Albrecht. And I did send an email on this and I just want to be clear. Thank you for the response on it. When I sent the email, I did not realize that the daycares, you are only busing to the schools that the daycares are in. So I found that news out since I even emailed. So I just, like I said, moving into the district has put my family in a worse situation than if we would have just stayed in Janesville. So thank you.
A couple quick responses to some of the questions that you brought up. One is, one I'll address and then I'll turn things over to Principal Kramer. And I apologize for my voice is going here. You had asked about the possibility of some type of appeal, and as we've been looking at different options, that's something that we're considering. We'll be digging more into what that type of thing could potentially look like, and if we do make that change, that's the type of thing that we wouldn't have to wait for the school board meeting on the 22nd, because we could build that into the administrative guidelines. So that's something that we're looking at for families who are who the new boundaries have change their child from the school that they're in right now. And then I want Principal Kramer to speak to a couple of the transportation pieces.
Okay, first we're gonna talk about the 4K transportation with the consolidated student, and then we'll talk about the small wonders thing in a second. So one of the things that we are looking at, and some of you already heard this last night, is the flexibility with those midday routes that only have 4K students on them and busing them anywhere in the district to a daycare type thing. At the same time, we know there's no 4K offered at Consolidated, and you're a Consolidated family, so now what do I do, right? So one of the things that we are discussing and looking to put in those administrative guidelines is allowing those families that are Consolidated area that need 4K at West, figuring out that transportation. So here's an example. If we were to put your son or daughter that's the 4K'er in the AM section at West, okay? So they would have the potential then, if it's a daycare or your home, whichever it would be, to come in together on that bus, right? So then starting school at Milton, or I'm sorry, let me stop because you have a Consolidated. All right, hold on. So my point to you is that we are looking at ways to provide transportation for those students, 4K, to get to Milton West, knowing that, so it'd be kind of a blended West Consolidated for the 4K only. Does that make sense? Now, I know you still have the small wonders thing, but I'm telling you that we're looking at providing that transportation into West for the 4K students because we do not offer it at Consolidated because there's no space. Okay, so there's that piece. Now I want to address, because two of you have brought up this letter in the mail and then 2 weeks later. So when that letter was sent, so yep, that is true, that Mrs. Koyo, who is teaching kindergarten this year, will now be teaching first grade next year. And what a great opportunity for these students to be able to start next school year with her. Okay, but that was before the decision was made to go with the attendance boundaries. Okay, so yep, that's true. That letter was sent out for those families, not knowing that every single student in that classroom was either going to move or would be moved to another attendance area. Okay, now do you have any follow-up question about the confusing attendance West 4K Consolidated? Yep. What I want you to know, though, is that that is something that we are working on to bring more clarification for those families that have students in Consolidated, but then a 4K'er. So we're working on coming up with a solution to that. That's what I want you to know.
And if you have a Consolidated kindergarten through third grader, but a West 4K'er, they don't have to be at a different daycare. They can be picked up at the same daycare.
Not your small wonders.
Not, but you had mentioned that you would need a separate daycare for those two, and I'm just letting you know that you would not need a separate daycare because you're a Consolidated family with a West 4K'er. They'll be able to be picked up at the same one if you had a Consolidated daycare.
So it doesn't fix your small wonders, but
No, I just wanted to clarify that they would still be the same piece.
Chris, if you want to reach out to this person on your specific situation, you can get that info to you tomorrow. Thank you.
I have a question in regards to that exact thing, but with open enrollment outside of the district. So open enrolled 4K'er, that daycare in Consolidated area. Our son too is in the Consolidated area daycare, but our home is West. The open enrolled student was told that there are other 4K'ers in that area. That child could then be bused to West. What about my son, who is at that daycare, but it's not offered for us? We are not home in the morning. We are not home in the afternoon. But the open enrolled child got told yes, supposedly, that very well to do from her. Can I clarify? You have a 4K going up and go, in the door. I am in the district. Okay, home is West. So it's like that check. Consolidated home is our baby. Also, open enrolled students into the district goes to that same center. They were told not because you know what I mean? 4K-er? Yes, because there's not a consolidated 4K option. So, other question, my older daughter, Gwen, who is in Lillian first grade, can she get on at that same location? They're all going to the same place. But they live in a consolidated area. So I guess I'm asking. But it's something that's something we need. Because the open enrolled child is being told yes. And me living in the district is being told no. So that to me is a huge frustration. This is our home. And we both are alumni. We are not upset. Actually, our daughter goes consolidated right now. Those things that are based on our care provider. I can totally handle the change to what? I believe that every school in the district is great. Again, the daycare situation and the open enrolled students who may be better off is a huge. And I hope that will consider that.
Yeah, if you want more discussion about that individual situation, we would be happy to.
I did
touch.
email and I did get the number. You could send me back, and I know in the email you kind of said that what you think about that. So I do again appreciate all of you that you kind of respond. So that was just my question in regards to the board.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I think we have a couple folks yet that want to comment for us, so please, please do so. Introduce yourself if you can.
Hi, I'm Pam Matthews. I am speaking on behalf of at least third graders going into their last year. Every school is great. We've got friends in every school district. All the teachers and staff are wonderful. We love you. Started with you. Sydney's in her final year. And not only does she know the building, the teachers, her friends, those teachers know her and her abilities and her capabilities. So with her and all of her friends that are also, you know, on the cusp and on the verge of having to go to a different school their final year, I make a plea for that exemption on third graders. And also I had emailed her teacher and principal and 2 of you on the school board. I have a map that shows we're right on the cusp. We're not in West, we're not at East, but we've been at West since my son started there. So he's now at Northside and she's in her last year. And I would like to have I didn't receive any letter as to preparing me. This was going to be happening. You may be going to East next year. I just suddenly hearsay and look at the map and then there's still no answer because I'm not in that section. So if you remember, if you happen to look at the email that I'd sent you with the map stating and where my spot is, I'm on the northwest corner of that intersection and I'm in no man's land. So I would like to have an answer from my daughter shortly that she can either be staying at her local school or she will be moving. It's a lot, it's very hard for all the people that need daycare. They're both able to come home directly. I completely empathize with all that. Anyone needing a help at West, Leah's wonderful. I will give her a plug right now. But if there's some sort of answer that gives us a clear cut, because I can't even see where we would be going on the map. So I would appreciate a letter of some sort of communication this week, so I know.
We'll make sure that we get back to you as soon as possible, within the next day or two for sure, with answers to that.
That would be great.
Thank
Like
you.
I say, I would really like to plead for all the third graders to make it an exemption, that they can stay where they're at. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe we have a gentleman.
Hi, I'm Nick Kleefoth. Actually, I was just had a question on one of the bullet points that was presented in the session information sheet here. Choices provided to some, but not to others. I guess my question is, school district employees had the choice to put in for that open enrollment on June 5th. So me as a taxpayer has to wait for their children to be placed. I'm assuming maybe some of these teachers may not necessarily be in the district, may not be paying taxpayers, but they're going to potentially have the option to place their child into a school of choice over myself because they're a school district employee. So the question I have is how is that being provided an equal chance to place our child that has the transportation needed to go to their open enrolled school based on our daycare over a school district employee that may not even be in the district, tax-paying resident? I guess it's just a question. I mean, you guys are saying that you want to provide equality to everybody, but allowing some people to have an opportunity to place their children before everybody else. Like, why isn't there a lottery? Why can't we be on the same list as everybody else?
I apologize. I missed the very, very start of your question. I want to make sure that I'm not misassuming something. Did you say that you live outside of the school district?
No. So we live my wife had talked over there. So we live in the west boundaries. Our daycare provider is in the Consolidated. Our daughter went to Consolidated this year. There's a bus that stops right outside their house. So we have the transportation. They have the transportation to get our child to the school. But if others are having the opportunity to potentially take our daughter's spot ahead of time, how is that providing your bullet point of creating equality with this plan?
And your desire would be to, if at all possible, to have your child stay at Consolidated School?
Yes, I mean, we have no issues with any of the schools, but work-wise, daycare-wise, it's beneficial for us to stay where we're at.
That's something, as we're looking at different options over the next couple of days, that's something that we'll address, is how if we can build in some type of a system where people request a transfer from their attendance area to the school that they were in prior to this, how we prioritize those different pieces. And I think your point,
the district employees have already had that opportunity as of June 5th, correct?
No.
No? You sure?
They had put in a request.
But
We
we haven't granted, we haven't made
And
any.
I'm not saying they've been placed, but they've had the opportunity, whereas I have not had the opportunity to put a place in.
Resident students will get placed prior to any other.
Any staff members.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Do we have anybody waiting for a question over there? Can we have you go to a mic though, so that people who are virtual
We did have someone in line over
can
here.
hear us? Yeah, after him.
My name is John Rumpel. Bear with me for a second because I've tried to take in everything that I've heard over the last couple days and last couple weeks after this stuff has come out. And I'm trying to collect as much information as I can to come up with how myself as a community member and a parent of children in the elementary schools, however, our house does not affect my child moving. I do not have a daycare provider that's going to be affected. It's just my child going to school and his friends. And more importantly to me is how this district is functioning within the Milton community. So from what I've heard over the last couple weeks, I've seen poor communication admitted to by the administration that brought a plan to redraw district lines to change K-3 students. Based on information tonight, was an estimated 132 students, which is 1.5 times bigger than Consolidated Schools student enrollment. Right? If we were making a decision that would require the change of that many students or to move all of those Consolidated School students, we would have absolutely brought more people in this Milton community to that table, right? Next, I came into a planned town hall that was anticipated, that said that there was going to be a presentation of the plan that would explain a lot of the questions that parents would have or that community members would have. It was a one-sheet plan with very little data points, very little information that explained why this solution fixes the problems that you address, right? We are looking now, we are June 9th. Enrollment starts in 7 weeks for the upcoming school year. We are now talking about a board meeting that's 2 weeks away from now at the earliest for the next possible understanding of a plan forward, right? I moved into this district 5 years ago. My wife and I came in with a child that would be starting in 4K. We were able to do the research as I had an advanced plan for knowing I was going to move back to the area. I'm originally from Rock County. I looked at all the districts that my kids could possibly go to with the plan that they would go K-12, as that's very important to me. I was a former educator. I taught for over 10 years. I have a master's in educational leadership and administration, right? I'm a son of a lifetime educator and a son of a father that served on a local school board for over a decade. I've watched and grown up in public education my whole life. And in the last 5 years in this district, over and over again, the communication between the community, administration, and school board continues to be lost somewhere. We continue to have meetings and we continue to have outcries by the community for issues that get brought up in a school board member or in a school board meeting, or not even brought up in a school board meeting, that affect our kids and our community daily. Where I want to say right now is that based on what I've heard, if you're an administrator, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, right, or a school board member, this does not make sense to continue down this road based on what we've heard. Based on what I've heard and what we should be, is this should be brought back to the community of Milton. Given chances for people to be heard, for information and more data than what I've seen to be collected and shared to come up with a plan that better serves our community than what is currently presented to our parents and for our students. We all are stakeholders in this community. We all have our reasons for wanting to expect excellence from all people involved. And day in and day out, after all of this has been said, and I've watched emails go from administration to parents and school board members and had discussions within my own social groups, I just don't see where this district or school board, it's got to be pushed off. I think there's definitely points there for a phased approach, or to address some of the childcare issues that are going on, and I'm not going to argue that having a 4K student have to get 3 buses and sit on a bus for an hour is acceptable for anybody sitting in this room. But at the same time, I don't expect moving 10 or 15% of our youngest elementary school students to different schools and telling parents that they have less than 2 months to prepare them and themselves at this time. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. So I urge school board members and I urge administration to come together and work together to push this out and come up with a better plan that can address the issues that we've seen here tonight and we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and come up with a plan that better serves our community and our students forward. Thank you.
to busing and transportation. So I heard initial information from another bus company in another district that there would be like one kid per seat alternating every other row. So obviously that would have a significant impact on busing capacity. So my concern is that we are putting a whole lot of clout into changing all of the busing, into changing all of the transportation, which could be a complete moot point by the next year if we have to scale back and have less busing available, or have to have more buses and more bus drivers available to handle the same capacity of the kids. So I just wanted to kind of put that in perspective. Like, we're operating with so many unknowns at this point. It's really hard. I think we need to pause and we need to figure out what we're going to do, like right now. I mean, we are working with kids that we had to explain a pandemic and we're going to be on house arrest and we can't eat out, we can't go to the park, to we have to explain to our kids why they're seeing a police officer kill a man on TV when they're watching the news with their parents. We've had enough. Now we have to figure out how we're going to rip kids away from their schools or try to find daycares that don't exist, when the CDC guidelines and all the social distancing, classroom capacities, all of that is unknown. That's all I want to say.
On the question about, I don't want to take too much time here because it is getting late, but on the question about the transportation for this fall, we did share some things on that at the board meeting last night about transportation. In general, we are waiting for, there's some guidance coming from the State Department of Public Instruction and Department of Health Services. I heard in a meeting today with other people from across the state that we should have that information next week from them, some guidelines from the state, and that transportation is one of the things that they'll be addressing. It will be up to local districts how they approach it, and different districts might do it different ways. The state isn't going to mandate a certain method, but our plan is to continue to bring that information to the school board meetings as we have it. We've been updating the board every school board meeting so far, and that at our first school board meeting in July to bring a proposal for returning students and staff to school. So that's kind of our timeline for that. Okay. I want to thank everyone for your thoughts and really encourage you, if you have, some people had questions or thoughts that were general, and some had questions or thoughts that were very specific to their situation. If you have something that's specific to your situation and you want some more clarity around that, definitely feel free to reach out to us in the upcoming couple days, and we'll get back to you with more information about your specific situation. In general, we're hearing very clearly some themes of concerns that people are sharing. Concerns about daycare, both the transportation to daycare, what's going to happen to the client base for daycare. We're hearing concerns about the timing of this change with the COVID and with where we are in this school year. And we're hearing concerns about taking students who have been at a certain school, and we're hearing it from all of our schools, that they value that school and would like an opportunity for their children to remain at that school. So those are different things that we'll be discussing over the next couple of days. We understand the timeline now, and we want to move forward as quickly as possible with a thoughtful plan that addresses the concerns that are in place. And we did hear a couple questions towards the end that shared that they didn't feel that we had shared enough data about the problems with the current system. And I don't want to take anybody's time right now to dig into those again. But if you are uncertain about that, we definitely can visit more about why the current system and the status quo isn't something that we can continue. And we understand that, but we also understand the concerns that you've raised and want to find a way to meet those middle ground. So I want to thank you all again for coming tonight. Encourage you to stay in touch. If there's things that you've said that you would share with us, get those to us, and we'll take those very seriously as we move forward. So, yep.
I just want to address Mr. Moore's comment about us not having kids at that age. They changed her look to come on the floor so I could see her in the morning. They could switch corners, which freaked me out. So I just want, we've all been there at one point. It's just, I know it's fresh now. Yeah.
2 months finding childcare. It's not feasible.
I'm just saying it's not far out of my memory. Of being there.
You've been there, I get it.
dealing with all that,
Same
so.
time though, none of you have kids that are currently talking about this being uprooted. Your kids are uprooted, you can find them up here.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I want you to rest assured we heard you, and that was the goal for tonight. I hope it's been helpful for everybody, and please share your concerns so that we can address them. You'll take care of shutting this down.
I'm working on it.
Me and him don't get along. We get along fine. I just can't remember to mute him.